Yeah.
Retired publisher. Shipperson, I think.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good guy. Yeah, he brought a really healthy, different but healthy perspective. Lawyers have things.
I'm gonna be
Short.
I'll blow that up.
Short, as I hope so. I expect it.
And I'll run your stopwatch when you're 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Julie did say it's okay to tell why she's not here,
To what?
to tell why she's not here, so people didn't think she just skipped out of it.
Oh, that, okay. What, tell me again why. I don't know what she said, her sister was ill?
Yeah, her sister's in critical care unit.
Oh,
We've seen a chair that doesn't sit up as high as I. So I feel like I'm like this, peeking over the top, and I'm not sure. So this is yours too.
yeah. I picked one up and forgot.
Joan, are you on the call? Dan Breitbart, are you on the call?
Not now.
I don't think so.
You were changed.
My error.
We need to change that, both on the agenda
I don't know.
and on,
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
we'll make a note of that. Right,
Already got it done.
okay. And on the agenda too. You can actually, when you say first approval agenda, let's change that.
What's this?
Yeah, didn't look to be on this, probably.
No, it's not, is it?
It's up here. It's
Yeah, no, I see it, I just,
Dan, are you on the call? Joan Corbin, are you on the call?
Is Monica on?
What?
Did-
Monica McHugh, are you on the call? It's 1 o'clock. We'll just hold off for a few
Right,
minutes.
Sydney?
roll call?
We just don't, it's not usually actually listed. We just usually do it with.
Jackie? We're in here,
You're almost there.
So close.
right over here.
Thank you. And Jackie, if you want water or snacks or anything, they're right up there. Thank you. It's,
You're not allowed to bring your own
we
food.
changed it.
Oh, no,
not-
only if I bring it up to
not the
share.
one you got. It's, his name.
Dan, are you on the call?
Very good, no. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Joan Corbin, are you on the call? Monica?
DJ Giovanni, welcome aboard.
Joel, your first name is James, right? But your real name's Joel, and that's what you go by. Okay.
Do we need to change that, huh? We don't need to. It doesn't.
Yeah, the published agenda has it under.
Others that are on the phone, we're just waiting for a couple of our board members to join us on the call.
We got a problem.
Okay, let's be a really short meeting.
Yeah.
It'll be a really long meeting then.
Dan Breitbarth, are you on the call?
For those of you who are wondering why we're sitting around, we're waiting for a quorum, so just in case.
Monica McHugh, are you on the call?
Is 5 a quorum
Yeah.
for the
Yes.
9-member board?
Joan Corbin, are you on the call?
Barry, that was kind of a long trip just to say hello, wasn't it?
Yeah. They usually stay down here.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't have to drive back, but it doesn't get dark now until 8:30, 9 o'clock, so
Yeah.
I'll make the round trip till fall.
I'm going to be in Dubuque the evening of the 23rd of June. I'm doing a training up there for
So,
the,
EJ. So,
for the
EJ,
county
all we
auditors.
do was call the meeting to order, do a roll call,
I'm staying
so we
at
don't have a
the
quorum.
Marriott downtown.
How long are you going to wait?
Or
Where is it?
Yeah,
in
we can- I
Dubuque.
think we can wait.
They're doing it at the Hotel Julian, but
We'll still call the meeting.
they didn't have any saved
Officially.
rooms
Yeah.
left for me, and it was going to be super
Really?
expensive.
Didn't we have an introduction of
And
the
no
new
windows
members?
in the room.
Yeah, we can,
Well,
yeah, we can do anything that's non-voting.
Yeah,
Summertime, all year round, really.
yeah, so I'm saying,
Dan Breitbart, are you on the call? Joan Corbin, have you joined us? Monica McHugh, are you on?
do you have phone numbers?
Not with me. Well, yes, I do, actually.
Why don't you, let me see Dan's phone number, I'll call him. Went directly to voicemail.
Dan was going to be flying today, but he thought he could make the first hour of the meeting, so.
Oh,
Well, even if we get him, we're only going to be good for an hour.
I was gonna say, just because I'm new to this, I only planned a couple of hours, so I'll join virtually
Okay.
this time, but now I know that I need to
Yeah.
block out a much larger chunk
Sure.
of time going forward.
Well, and there's some meetings that we are done by 3:15.
Yeah, you
There's
never
other
know.
meetings where it's
Yeah.
4:15.
You're right, right.
So,
this is the first time we've ever not had a forum.
The first time I've chaired too.
I know, I'm just like, I
I
don't
wonder if
think,
that's a coincidence.
nobody knew you were chairing, so.
Yeah, thank God.
They had a sense.
Yeah, they do. They probably do.
Nobody knew.
Oh, my God.
Joan Corbin, are you on the phone?
Because if we'd known that people weren't going to be here, we would have canceled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't bring everybody here for a lack of forum. So that's why we always ask,
Right.
when we send things out, to make sure people are going to be here, so we have a forum.
Makes sense.
So the next meeting, there'll be twice as many items.
Exactly, yeah.
This is Brett.
So you would skip the meeting
Who's
because
this?
there's not a quorum, but then do everything in the next one?
Just, can we read special meetings?
Or you could do, we could do a special meeting
We might want
too.
to keep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you.
Oh,
Thought it was somebody that needed let in.
Oh. Oh, and it
Something
was,
about siding on my house,
oh, okay.
on my brick house. that is.
I don't think that works.
I don't think you wanted to come to this meeting.
No.
Joan Corbin, are you on the phone yet?
Somebody just dialed in, Brett, asking you.
Dan Breitbach, are you on the call?
Who's making noise?
Monica McHugh.
Okay, we'll try it.
Did Joan say something?
Joan Corbin, are you on? Joan was going to be in between whether coming or on the phone because she had a school board association meeting also through the noon hour.
Have you tried calling her,
But
John?
I have not.
Okay. Okay, do you need it? Okay, thank you. You're quorum, so we're gonna wait for you. All right. She didn't have the number with her, so she now has it, and she's going to be calling you.
Okay.
That was Joan. I did not try Monica, and we just have a home number.
Yeah, Monica, I didn't think was going to be here at all
Okay.
from her indication. So everybody waiting on the call, we're still waiting momentarily for a quorum of a board member.
We could ask him who's on the phone.
Yeah.
We could get that part done.
Yeah, well, why don't we go ahead and get a list of anybody who's called in and is waiting? Go ahead and just announce yourself.
Fran Mearsla?
Fran, okay. That's her complaint, it's number 8.
Anybody else?
Megan Liebert, Julie, sorry.
Megan Weeks,
Yes.
okay.
Anyone else? Okay.
This is Joan Corbin. I am on the call now.
Super. Joan, it's nice to hear from you. You've just made a quorum. Congratulations. You get a gold star.
Yes, Margaret, I had written down the wrong conference code and I wasn't right by my computer, so it took me a minute. Sorry.
Okay. But you're ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right. Thank you. Well, why don't we,
Roll call first.
let's call the meeting to order and take roll call.
Dan Breitbarth. Joan Corbin.
Present.
EJ Giovanetti.
Here.
Barry Lindahl.
Here.
Joel McCrae.
Here.
Monica McHugh. Julie Podorf. Jackie Schmillen.
Here.
EJ, you have 5 board members present and 3 absent.
Thank you. We'd ask, before we go any further, we ask approval of the agenda. Right? Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any question on the motion? We have to take roll.
Just do a voice.
Those in favor indicate by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? None.
Aye.
Unanimous.
I would note just for everybody that there's it should say EJ is a public representative up in the heading part of it, and we'll make that change.
Okay.
It's changed roles.
Okay. Next item is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the April 21 minutes?
So moved.
Is
This
there?
is Joan. I would second.
Thank you. Any question, comment? Those in favor indicate by saying.
Sorry. This is Joan again. I'm sorry. You're going to have to get a different second, and I am not going to, I'm going to recuse myself from this. I wasn't on this meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll second it. Been moved and seconded. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Public forum. We are now in public forum. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the board that does not have a matter that's on the agenda? Those folks can speak when the item comes up. Well, if there are, hearing none, we will move ahead. Comments from the chair, and it's obvious the chair's not here. Unfortunately, Julie Pottorf is caring for her sister, who is currently critically ill and was unable to make it. And the vice chair, Monica, had apparently a conflict as well. So by unpopular consent, I'm here. And I was told I was senior, and let me just tell you, I hear that commonly anymore. I don't know why that is, but anyway. But moving on, we'd like to introduce the new members. First of all, on behalf of the board, welcome to all of you. And maybe we start off, you introducing yourself and tell you a little about yourself to us. Jackie?
Hello, everybody. Jackie Schmelin. I'm here as a media representative because I'm a morning anchor with Local 5 ABC. Been in the world of journalism for 15 plus years and happy to be serving on the board.
Well, congratulations and thank you for accepting the responsibility. Joel?
Joel McCrae, I'm the president of iHeartMedia in Iowa, and was a former journalist and then moved up into the administrative ranks. And next year will be my 30th year at WHO, and glad to be on the board.
Again, congratulations and
Thank
thanks. Thanks. It's quite a responsibility, so for those of you who are willing to join us, we really appreciate it. Thank you. I have no other comments, so at this point, we move to advisory opinion. And we see we have none. Is that correct, Margaret?
That is correct. We do not have anything pending. I will note that for the June meeting, we're going to be presenting a proposed advisory opinion concerning the modification in a statute that just was recently adopted, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the legislative report, but we're going to be presenting that in June.
Okay. So next item is cases involving board deliberation, and again, Margaret, we will talk about Abel Ernie and the city of Aspie, which is, I'll give it to you from here. How's that?
That's fine. This is case numbers 21 FC 0119, 22 FC 0004, and 22 FC 0021. Concerns Ernie Abel as the complainant and the Arispe City Council as the respondent. There is an attachment that is the attachment is the actual factual basis for the formal investigation.
I didn't measure that. It's got to be from the line down, whatever that is.
Excuse me.
No, this was 3/4.
Excuse me.
Hello?
Please mute
No,
your
these
phone.
three were 6'11" and a half. She said, no, that one's 3/8.
Please mute your phone, please.
Thank you.
I'll continue. There you'll see as the attachment the information from Rhett Torsdahl as to the investigation.
Who's ever on the phone, please mute your phone.
We're hearing somebody talking or walking around and banging stuff.
We got the wrong number.
I think probably Fran has somebody in there.
Just put it up there and let it be just barely off the ground would be better for it anyway. Line up the line up there.
Ernie, is that you? Ernie Abel?
Hello? It's upside down on the angle. Sorry, I put it up there wrong, or you did, or whoever. Flip it over.
Should we hang up and
It'll be everybody.
well, I know that,
That's
but
right.
then they can call back. Is there somebody who is on this line and doesn't belong on the line? We can hear you talking about something being put upside down.
All right, there we have
Okay.
We had to hang up.
Okay.
Okay.
Just gotta yell at them.
Yeah.
All right. Back to Ernie Abel as the complainant and Arispe City Council. You will see as the attachment number 1, the probable cause report that was prepared by Brett Torsdahl. He was able to review records provided by the council concerning allegations, interview witness, and review copies of minutes and agendas. The council participated in negotiations for the resolution of this complaint through the informal resolution process under 23.9 and had signed a proposed informal resolution. The complainant was unwilling to agree to an informal resolution. Mr. Torsdahl oversaw the completion of the goals set by IPIB staff to remediate the violations. And you can read from the attachment, starting on the bottom of the first page, the remedial efforts on the part of the city. There was an acknowledgement. There was, they established a communication system where the mayor, council, and clerk was able to provide a way for the public to communicate with the governmental body. They adopted reasonable rules for the conduct of its meetings. They adopted a public records response policy. They conducted a training with the Iowa League of Cities on all aspects of Iowa Code Chapters 21 and 22. The records that had been requested by Mr. Abel were provided to him on April 7th, and they adopted a checklist of the steps and procedures needed for a closed session. So those were the issues that were brought forth with those 3 complaints, and they have been appropriately and adequately resolved. So at this point in time, our recommendation is that the board make a finding that there is probable cause to believe that the Arispe City Council violated Iowa Code Chapter 21 as alleged in all 3 complaints, and that the board dismiss the case as an exercise in administrative discretion. That is subsection 22.4C of our administrative rules that allows the board to do that. But for your information, the 4 things that the board can do are also listed there. You could return it to staff for more investigation. You could determine that there is not probable cause to believe a violation has occurred, or you could make a determination that probable cause exists to believe a violation has been occurred and designate a prosecutor and direct the issuance of a statement of charges. It's our recommendation that we dismiss the case as an exercise of administrative discretion because the violations have been appropriately and adequately resolved.
Anyone speak to the issue or to the case?
The attorney for Arispe is on the phone.
Megan Weeks, sorry.
Megan Weeks, would you like to say, address the board?
Sorry, I am having a hard time hearing everybody. There's some feedback on the phone, but I think that I heard everything correctly. And as it was stated by the speaker, that is all the remedial efforts that have been done by the city. I have been newly appointed as their city attorney, and I oversaw all of that, all of those remedial efforts, and I am still their city attorney and hope that we don't run into this issue in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for being available to us today. Thank you. Does the board, anyone else speak to it, the case? If not, does the board have any comments? Any motions?
I'd move to approve the report with the recommendation that it be dismissed.
Moved by Barry,
Second.
seconded by Joel. You need a roll call?
We don't need it if you don't want, unless you want it.
I don't need it. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I
Thank you, Joan. Those opposed? None. Thank you. Next item is Jesse Adams and Sioux City Police Department. Margaret?
Yes, this is case number 22FC0023. It concerns Jesse Adams as the complainant and the Sioux City Police Department as the respondent. This complaint was filed on March 24th of this year, alleging that the Sioux City Police Department violated Iowa Code Chapters 21 and 22 on March 17th of 2022. Later, Mr. Adams indicated that it was only actually an alleged violation of Iowa Code Chapters 22 and did not include Chapter 21, the Open Meetings Law. So this only addressed Chapter 22. On March 14th, he requested to examine a police report on an alleged crime he had reported with the Sioux City Police Department. The Records Department told him that the police investigation was ongoing and refused to allow him to examine the report. On March 17th, he then filed a request for a copy of the report pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 22. He alleged that as of March 24th, he had not received the records. Legal counsel for the Sioux City Police Department replied to the comment on April 26th. They stated that the incident which resulted in the police report occurred on March 14th, and then on March 17th, he first requested a copy of the report. At that time, and it should say SCPD rather than CSPD, and I will make that typographical change, considered the report confidential pursuant to Iowa Code Section 22.75. And the incident report had been referred to the county attorney's office for review on whether to file criminal charges. Mr. Adams was referred to the county attorney on the 17th. He visited that office on March 18th. He was again denied a copy. The police department requested an expedited decision on the charging and was informed that no charges would be filed. So on April 4th, an email was sent to Mr. Adams advising him of this decision and providing an invoice for the costs associated with the record release. They stated that he contacted the police department on April 5th, and they redetermined what the payment was going to be, and that revised invoice was sent on April 8th, and they still have those records available for him to pick up or to pay for so that they can send those to them. And at this point in time, he has not picked those up. I've listed there 22.7 sub 5 concerning certain police officers' investigative reports that are confidential, and I put that there in full. They stated that counsel stated that Mr. Adams, as a reporting party to the alleged crime, already knew the date, time, specific location, and immediate facts and circumstances, and then he was advised of the specific charge under investigation and the status of the investigation when referred to the county attorney's office on March 17th. Therefore, the information required to be released by Iowa Code Section 22.75 was properly released. It was not a violation for the remainder of the investigative report to be withheld as confidential. The record was made available for release within 18 calendar days of his request, and that's not, in this case, an unreasonable or untimely delay. So my recommendation is that it be dismissed as legally insufficient.
Anyone who would speak to the case on the line or otherwise? Board, any comments?
I just have one question. In paragraph on the second page, therefore the information required was properly released. Is that because he knew?
Well, it's because they discussed it. He was given that information at the time, but of course, he knew the information because... Okay,
so they actually did give him that?
They had a discussion about which one he wanted, and he knew which one it was that he wanted. It was a domestic incident, and so he had called it in, so he wanted a copy of his statement for some reason. And he did get it, but just not the day it happened. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Joan, can you hear us okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Anything else? Is there a motion?
Motion to dismiss as legally insufficient.
Moved. Second. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
This is Joan, I would second.
Moved by Jackie.
Second by Jackie.
Yeah. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Moving to item 3, William Byers and Adair City Council. A motion to continue.
Yes, this comes before you on this motion to continue It's case number 21FC0081. William Byers is the complainant, and it's against the Adair City Council. This has been an ongoing informal resolution. Because of scheduling conflicts, they were unable to get the training completed. They were concerned that they might not be able to get the training completed by June 15th of 2022, and so they've asked that they have another 30 days in order to make sure that the training does occur on June 15th is the date that they scheduled with the Iowa League of Cities, but things could happen, so they just asked for a buffer of another 30 days, and we didn't feel that there's a problem with that. So they completed, I think, everything else that they needed.
Is there anyone on the line that'd like to speak to this? Anyone here? Board, any comments or questions? Seems pretty straightforward. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the motion.
Moved by Barry. Second?
Second.
Second by Joel. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Item 4 is Jacob Hall and the Linn-Mar School District dismissal.
Yes, this is case number 22FC0024. Jacob Hall is the complainant and the Linn-Mar School District as the respondent, and it comes before you as a dismissal order. It was filed on March 27th of 2022, alleging that the school district violated Iowa Code Chapter 22. Mr. Hall alleged that he filed a public records request on November 19th, 2021, requesting an opportunity to inspect or obtain copies of public records involved Trans-Week communications from the Linn-Mar School District. This request includes any and all communications from administration and staff involving, quote, Trans-Week, and that's actually from his record request. On December 3rd, the district responded to the request indicating that it would cost approximately $504 because of the time necessary to retrieve the records and the fees to be paid to legal counsel to review and redact confidential information. He then asked for additional information concerning that fee estimate on December 3rd, 7th, and 9th. On December 10th, the district had stated that the quoted cost was for a search of all communications per employee, which would, if it was for all employees, it could run as high as $604,000. On December 10th, then Mr. Hall and the district engaged in a number of emails to determine if the search could be limited to reduce the cost and the number of records, because he asked for every employee in the school district. It was a rather 1,200 employees, so it was a pretty big school district that they would have to search emails. In an email dated December 14th, Mr. Hall told the district that he wanted any and all communications involving Trans-Week and named 3 individuals plus all district school board members for the time period of 1 month before Trans-Week to December 14th, 2021. The revised fees for that search was quoted at $637. He then asked to include 2 more names, and that resulted in a new fee estimate of $652. And on January 5th, the district advised that the records had been found and they were being reviewed by legal counsel for any necessary redactions. The records were then released on January 12th upon his payment of the $652 agreed upon fee, and there were 57 pages of records released. On January 19th, Mr. Hall questioned the small number of released records, alleging that some records may have been withheld. He had received communications separately from members in the community, and those communications he had gotten copies from the parents, not from the school district. And he was concerned that those had not been included in the record request, and he also questioned the cost involved and asked if text messages were included. He had some questions about redactions. And then he asked, at that time he had a new request for text. The district responded to his questions on January 19th and answered all of his questions that he had. Another search for text messages was requested by the district on January 28th, and on February 4th, they found one text message that met his requirements. He alleged that the public records laws were violated by the district because of other communications that he knew about and because the fees charged exceeded the amount allowed by Chapter 22. Legal counsel responded to this complaint on April 8th. The response included exhibits totaling 98 pages, which we do have, but not attached to the order. The district requested that the complaint containing the records was legally insufficient, that the fee complaint was not filed in a timely manner. I set out 22.7 sub 1, which is the confidentiality of student records information, and there's specific information in records regarding a student that a school district is not allowed to release because they're considered confidential records. So records that he may have gotten from other people, even though they were records concerning trans week, because it was not from a school, they would not be under the same restrictions, so they could have shared their own personal ones. In addition, federal law, which is Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, requires an educational institution to redact certain information from student records that either name or identify students. And that's a federal law that the school also has to follow. Redacted records were provided to the IPIB by both parties. The redactions are very limited and appear appropriate in both state and federal laws. In an email then dated on April 8th, Mr. Hall stated that the district did not include records that included another term. That term was Transgender Week. If he wishes to go forward with records with a new term, he needs to submit a new record request because that was not part of his original record request. Okay, so the fee estimate was first provided on December 3rd and finalized on January 12th, more than 60 days prior to the filing of this complaint. Iowa Code 22.3 notes that the government body can charge a fee for the release of records based upon actual costs. And although, and this involved another complaint that Mr. Hall had filed with the Cedar Falls School District. And in that complaint, the order says, excuse me, although Mr. Hall may be correct in questioning whether allowing a lawful custodian to charge fees such as this makes such public records costs prohibitive, the statute did not impose any statutory dollar limit on fees. The school district could agree to charge less, but it's not a violation of Iowa law to request repayment of actual costs. And in this case, they actually negotiated an amount less than what they had initially thought they were going to have to, what they were initially going to charge. So at this point in time, my recommendation is that this be dismissed as legally insufficient. And as to the jurisdictional aspect, the legal counsel had brought up that 23.7 sub 1, which limits the jurisdiction of the IPIB to 60 days from the date the alleged violation occurred. So the actual fee dispute was not brought up within 60 days of the time that they agreed upon the fees.
Any comment from anyone on the line or in the room? Board.
This is Christy Latta of the Allers Law Firm. Christy Latta of the Allers Law Firm. I'm just here on behalf of Linn-Mark Schools, and I don't have any comments. The proposal order is consistent, I think, with the district's position, but I just wanted to make sure you know I was available in case there were questions.
All right, thank you. We appreciate it. Board have any questions or comments?
I just have one question. First page says that there were 57 pages of records, and then the second page, apparently there was exhibits totaling 98 pages. Were those additional?
It was additional. It was also things that weren't, those other communications. So they had 98 pages of exhibits, I guess, probably the best. Exhibits totaling 98 pages. So legal counsel provided not only the records that were at issue, but also all their conversations about the fees and coming up with the search terms and that sort of thing. So that's why there were more than 57 pages.
Thank you.
Board have anything else? Any questions or comments? Is there a motion? Dismissal's been recommended by staff.
I move to approve the dismissal order.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded.
Yes.
Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Those opposed, by the same sign. Thank you. And council, we appreciate your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, likewise.
Next case is Merritt, Michael Merritt in Guthrie County.
Yes, and you will note as you look at the agenda that there's 3 cases involving Mr. Merritt, but with 3 different government bodies, and you may recall that we had another one on the agenda for the April meeting. So these are ongoing complaints concerning basically the same information, but involving different government bodies. So this one is case number 22FC 0018 concerning Michael Merritt and Guthrie County. And it comes before you as a proposed dismissal order. This complaint was filed on March 9th, alleging that Guthrie County violated Iowa Code Chapter 22. He provided documentation of a record request he filed on December 3rd, which requested copies of 1, City of Guthrie Center Information System end-user interaction with the following uniform resource locators URL between January 1st, 2017 and December 3rd, 2021, and 24 separate URLs were then listed. Number 2, all Guthrie Center, Iowa end-user electronic mail attachments mentioning domains in paragraph 1A. 3, all City of Guthrie Center emails or attachments, including a list of 22 specific names from January 1st, 2017 to December 3rd, 2021. And 4, City of Guthrie incident reports regarding 3 named individuals. You will note that this complaint is filed against Guthrie County, but the 4 items listed are all records from Guthrie Center and City in Iowa and in Guthrie County. He requested that those records be provided on a portable document format and thumb drive. The record request was sent on December 3rd, 2021 to the Guthrie Center City Hall and to a Guthrie County Sheriff's deputy. He alleged the county did not provide the records and did not acknowledge his record request. On February 15th, he sent an email status request, this time including Guthrie County, and this is the first time he actually included the county, but it still requested Guthrie Center city records. He alleged that a sheriff's deputy responded stating that the deputy wrote he did not understand what records was being requested. On February 17th, Mr. Merritt sent a second status update request, this time requesting these same similar records from the county. So he expanded his record request from just City of Guthrie Center to Guthrie County records. At the time of filing of the complaint, he alleged he had not received any other contact from the county and had not received any records. On March 22nd, the county responded to the complaint and stated that the county has no records responsive to the record request. On April 4th, then, the county attorney stated the county was now aware of the records being requested and that a deputy was retrieving the records. April 6th, the county attorney provided additional information indicating that the delay in response to the record request was due to the deputy being on medical leave and because there was some confusion as to whether Mr. Merritt was requesting Guthrie County or City of Guthrie Center records. The county attorney added that the county does not record the information requested in item number 1 above. The county also does not have any incident reports as requested in item 4, but could provide dispatch information. The county attorney stated that a request would be made to search for the records requested in items 2 and 3. The items found, those records that were found were released on April 18th, and copies of the call for service logs requested in item 4 were also released. All responsive records have now been released. The county stated that the record request was difficult to understand. Once the complaint was filed, it was quickly determined that 2 of the record requests described records that the city did not maintain or possess. The email records that were retrieved and released in 12 days. I've listed for you some guidance from the Iowa Supreme Court and from the Iowa Attorney General concerning concerning the whole issue of timeliness of record requests. It says, and in particular, the Attorney General said, delay is never justified simply for the convenience of the governmental body, but delay will not violate the law if it is in good faith or reasonable. In this case, the records request initially referenced only the City of Guthrie Center, creating some confusion as to which body was responsible for fulfilling the request. Any initial delay by the county was good faith and reasonable. It's my recommendation that this be dismissed as legally insufficient.
Anyone on the line that would like to speak to this case? If not, board, any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I would move to dismiss the case as legally insufficient.
Thank you, Joan.
Second.
Seconded by Barry. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, by saying sign. Thank you. Next one, again, is Michael Merritt, and this is the City of Guthrie Center.
Yes, this is case number 22FC0019 and comes before you as an acceptance order. As noted, this involves the City of Guthrie Center. The formal complaint was filed on March 9th, alleging that the city violated Iowa Code Chapter 22. He provided documentation of a record request that he filed on December 3rd, which requested copies of, and you'll notice 1 through 4 is the same as what was listed in the last complaint. This record request was sent to Guthrie Center City Hall on December 3rd. He alleged that they did not provide the records and did not acknowledge his record request on December 3rd. On February 15th, he emailed and mailed a status request. He alleged he received no response from the city. Upon receipt of the complaint, IPIB staff notified the city on March 14th, 2022 of the complaint. On March 21st, legal counsel for the city responded saying that he would investigate and file a response. March 28th, he responded that the city clerk ran searches for the names and websites that Mr. Merritt requested. We find no records responsive to his request. And that would regard items numbered 2 and 3 in the record request. Between March 28th and April 6th, staff continued to communicate with the city and with Mr. Merritt to determine whether the other records were available. On March 31st, the city attorney noted that the city does not have incident reports of the city contracts with Guthrie County for law enforcement services. That would pertain to record request number 4, and that, of course, was included in the Guthrie County complaint and discussed in that one. On April 26th, city attorney forwarded a report from the Guthrie Center Communications, a private company used by the city for information and technological services. GCC was unable to provide the information requested by Mr. Merritt in item 1 of his record request. So as of April 26th, his record request had been responded to. GCC, as an aside, explained to IPIB, the city attorney, and Mr. Merritt that prior to March of 2020, the city did not have access to website history. On July 20th, in July of 2021, a service was installed to track website usage, but the information was only stored for 1 day. On April 24th, when the search was conducted, of the city's 4 computers, there were no matches that were found. Therefore, again, they had no responsive records to release pursuant to the information listed in item 1. In this case, of particular concern is that a record search by the city did not occur until after Mr. Merritt filed his formal complaint. When asked why the city did not share this information with Mr. Merritt in December of 2021, the city indicated that because there were no responsive records, the city thought no response was necessary to Mr. Merritt. It's our determination that there's no adequate justification for the city's failure to respond to the records request within a reasonable period of time. While Iowa Code Chapter 22 does not provide a specific time frame for a response, it does, Section 22.8 sub 4 allows for a good faith, reasonable delay in 4 specific situations. None of those 4 specific situations occurred with this complaint. In this case, there was a delay of 4.5 months between the date of the request and the sharing of information that no records existed. This delay required additional efforts on the part of the complainant and IPIP staff that would have been avoided if the city had responded promptly. In this case, the city would benefit from having a public records policy that would assist with the prompt release of records. And you will recall that we actually approved a rules amendment at the April meeting that would address timeliness of response and fulfillment of records requests. So something along that line would be beneficial for the city to have. It's our recommendation that this complaint be accepted and that we work with the parties to assist them in developing a plan or some sort of policy to make sure that they adequately respond to records requests when they receive those. And you'll see that there is a response from the city that basically says the same sort of thing. It doesn't say the delay didn't occur, it just said these were the reasons for the delay. And that was submitted by David Bruner, who is the city attorney.
Anyone on the line would like to speak to this case? Board, any comments, questions? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the acceptance order.
Moved by Barry. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joel. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign.
Aye.
Thank you.
I think she meant aye.
Delayed. Okay, now, again, Merritt versus Iowa State University.
Right. This is case number 22FC0025, Michael Merritt versus and the Iowa State University as a respondent. This complaint was filed on March 30th, alleging that Iowa State violated Iowa Code Chapter 22. Mr. Merritt alleged and provided information on a record request he sent to ISU on December 5th. And this one's a little different. While he did ask for the identity of ISU end users who interacted with the following uniform locators from July 1st of 2018 to December 5th of 2021, followed by a list of the same 24 URLs. He also asked for all ISU emails and attachments mentioning the 24 domains listed in number 1 and or the certain names with a list of 56 specific names between December 5th, 2016 and December 5th, 2021. He also asked for the academic or professional purpose regarding ISU's interaction with any of the 24 specific URLs provided in number 1. And number 4, he asked for the academic or professional purpose for ISU's interaction with any of the 56 specific names provided in item number 2. On January 3rd of this year, he sent a subsequent narrow request for the identity of Iowa State University end users who interacted with the following URLs while authenticated with the below ISU information system access with 49 specific time and host descriptions to replace item number 1 above. He also requested the historic record of a particular ISU employee's interactions with the 24 specific domains listed in item 1 above. A separate request included emails and attachments from a specific ISU employee from July 1st, 2018 to December 5th, 2021 that were to, from, or mention the 56 specific names and all emails and attachments from the same AISU employee that were to, from, or mention Ames High School or Ames Community School District. The reason and rationale, I think, for all of these is that he was trying to determine whether or not an ISU employee had been visiting these websites, which happened to be websites that he was affiliated with in some purpose, and whether or not his name was being mentioned by an ISU employee. So that's kind of the short synopsis of what he was asking for. Mr. Merritt provided the response he received from ISU on December 17th that informed him that his request for over 3 years of records was too broad, that ISU was unable to reasonably comply with this request. Therefore, they came up with a narrower record request on January 3rd, and then on March 1st, he stated he received a response from ISU acknowledging his secondary record request. He stated then that on March 24th, he received another response from ISU that included one email that ISU released pursuant to his request for copies of emails from the specified named employee. He was informed that other responsive emails had been withheld as confidential. ISU informed Mr. Merritt that his request for URLs visited by ISU network users could not be fulfilled as ISU did not retain those records. He added that he was informed that his request for emails and attachments mentioning the 56 URLs, the listed URLs and the 56 specific names he listed was also too broad and could not be retrieved. In response to this complaint, ISU legal counsel noted that ISU had provided all documents that were not confidential. In response to his record request, other emails were withheld because they were either confidential peace officers' investigative reports or information related to security measures. I've set forth for you the full text of 22.7 sub 5 that outlines that certain law enforcement records are confidential. ISU does have a police department. Currently, the police department is investigating an alleged incident. Releasing email conversations between law enforcement and the ISU employee could seriously jeopardize the investigation. In addition, Iowa Code Section 22.7 sub 50 states that certain security information is confidential, and the full text of that section is listed there for you as part of the order. Counsel stated that some emails contain information concerning security and response plans with the employee as part of an ongoing investigation. Release of those emails could reasonably be expected to jeopardize the safety of this employee or the employee's co-workers. According to Mr. Merritt, there is ongoing litigation involving child custody, parenting time matters, which involve Mr. Merritt and the specific ISU employee. At this point in time, my recommendation is that it be dismissed as legally insufficient pursuant to Iowa Code Section 23.8 sub 2. I was able to talk with legal counsel, and we discussed the nature and some of the emails, and I was definitely in agreement that at this point in time they would qualify as peace officers' investigative reports, and because of the nature of the investigation, it would jeopardize that investigation or seriously raise concerns about the safety of the employee.
Anyone on the line would like to speak to this? Board, any questions or comments?
So all of the information he was requesting somehow related to this investigation?
That's correct. He was asking, the URLs were all various websites that he has. And he believes that people are visiting his website, and so he wanted to know who was visiting the website. And then part of his allegations were that this ISU employee was misusing ISU computer equipment by going on and visiting his websites during work time. And so he was trying to find out that we probably know way too much about the underlying activities that he's been engaging in, trying to establish a resolution to his satisfaction on his child custody matter.
But you were satisfied in your discussion with counsel?
Exactly. Most of this, it's happened fairly recently, so it's still under investigation, and concerns about the safety of the employee and the other co-workers. If the communications between law enforcement and the employee were released, was definitely appropriate to not have those. If he needs them for any kind of a legal action, he would be able to, of course, request those and get those as part of discovery. But to just get them as public records is is a different theory, and different laws apply.
Barry, anything else?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to dismiss? Somebody?
I move to approve the dismissal order.
Moved by Barry,
I would second.
There you go.
second by Joan. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
John's
Next,
dog is opposed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I heard one opposed.
yeah.
I think that belongs to the next complaint.
The next issue, number 8, is Francis Mirzwa. Is that pronounced right? Go ahead.
Okay. This is case number 22FC0031. Fran, is that your dog that's barking?
That is not my dog.
Oh, okay. Somebody has a dog barking.
It's Jones.
Oh, Joan has a dog barking? Okay. All right. This is case number 22FC0031. Francis, and is it Mirzwa? Fran?
Mirzwa, very good.
Okay. And the Potawatomi County Board of Supervisors as the respondent. It comes before you as a dismissal order. It was filed on April 7th, 2022, alleging that the Potawatomi County Board of Supervisors violated Iowa Code Chapters 21 and 22 on January 24th, 2022. She alleged that the agenda for a meeting on December 29th, 2021 was grossly deficient. However, while the complaint alleged violations occurred on December 29th of 2021, all other information supplied shows that the meeting date was actually December 30th of 2021. She alleged that that a meeting of the board was held on that date with no other notification to the public. She added that meeting minutes were inadequate and that the meeting was not video recorded. In support of this complaint, she provided a copy of an agenda for a board meeting held on December 30th with only one agenda item listed, and it is quoted there in full. And it did talk about resolution number, which was entitled, "A Resolution Authorizing Purchase of Property," and designated board chair as an authorized representative to sign necessary document to effectuate said purchase. She also included a copy of the minutes of this meeting. The minutes included a full copy of the resolution and the results of the roll call vote of the board. She alleged that the purchase in question was of such significance that there should have been more advance notice and attention provided to the property issue. When she was advised that the IPIB is limited in jurisdiction to events that have occurred no more than 60 days prior to the filing of the complaint, she added that she did not become aware of the alleged violation until just recently, indicating that she could not have become aware of the complaint with reasonable diligence because she's full-time caregiver to 6-year-old twins, remote learning facilitator during a local surge in a global pandemic. And I've set forth for you Iowa Code Section 23.71, and as a note there on page 1, indicating that that code section says that complaints must be filed within 60 days from the time of the alleged violation, or the complainant could have become aware of the violation with reasonable diligence. Matt Wilbur, Potawatomi County Attorney, filed a response to the complaint on April 19th. I will note that throughout the rest of this order, I have misspelled Mr. Wilbur's name, so I will be correcting that. It's Wilber. I don't know whether Google did it, blame Google, but somehow or other his name was then misspelled the rest of the time. Mr. Wilbur, in his response, stated that the land purchase was the culmination of a board action over a few years to expand a county park in Potawatomi County. On October 21st, the board conducted a properly noticed meeting and went into closed session to discuss a property purchase. Since the purchase is now complete, a copy of the closed session minutes was provided, and a video of the session is also posted on YouTube. On December 21st, another properly noticed closed session was held to review the same property purchase. Mr. Wilbur was present during the meeting and presented 2 separate agreements for consideration, a purchase agreement and a leaseback agreement. Mr. Wilbur provided a copy of the session minutes and a link to the YouTube video of the closed session. Following the closed session on December 21st, 2021, the board voted in open session to authorize the board chair to sign these two agreements. The closing date was tentatively set for December 29th, as the closing date had to be before the 1st of January, pursuant to the terms of the purchase agreement. On December 28th at 5:33 p.m., Mr. Wilbur was advised by the seller's legal counsel that the title company needed a written resolution authorizing the purchase and designating the authorized representative to sign documents at closing. In order to provide the required 24 hours posted notice, Mr. Wilbur set a special board meeting for 10 a.m. on December 30th, 2021. He provided copies of all the documents posted and provided to the board prior to and at this meeting. He noted that the meeting was not posted to YouTube, as no one present knew how to do the YouTube recording. The board clerk was not available to be present, so Mr. Wilbur served as board clerk for this meeting. And I would also note that Iowa Code Chapter 21 does not require videotaping of open meetings. The agenda for the meeting noted that the board would be adopting a resolution and providing the authority previously granted by motion and vote. So it was basically a resolution that restated what they had agreed to in resolution form. A copy of the final resolution was not attached to the agenda because he was still working on it at that time. He stated that in his opinion as county attorney, he considered the actions of the board on December 30th to be ministerial in nature, as the initial decision to purchase the property and designate the board chair as signing authority had already been approved on December 21st, 2021. All board members were present at the December 30th, 2021 meeting. The closing for the property purchase was completed later on the same day. The minutes for the December 30th, 2021 meeting were approved by the board at its regular meeting on January 3rd, 2022. As to whether or not the complaint was timely filed, Mr. Wilbur provided a copy of a press release that was issued by Potawatomi County Conservation Department on January 4th. He also provided copies of various media publications about the purchase, including from the Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, the Associated Press, and U.S. News and World Report. He stated that three major television stations in Omaha, this is where it would have been, also reported on the purchase. As noted, Iowa Code Section 23.71 requires the filing of a complaint within 60 days. Even using the date the minutes were approved on January 3rd in an open meeting, the latest statutory filing date for the complaint about the December 30th, 2021 meeting would be March 4th. The complaint was not filed for another 34 days beyond that jurisdictional requirement. Even if the complaint had been timely filed, the records provided by the board in the response to this complaint clearly indicate that there was no violation of Iowa Code Chapter 21. Adequate notice was provided. The reason for the closed session was statutorily authorized, and the agenda and minutes were legally sufficient. It's my recommendation that it be dismissed as beyond the jurisdiction of the IPID and without merit. And I do note that the complaint is available. I'm not sure if Mr. Wilbur is, but I know she is. And she's also filed a written response that the board received last week as well.
Would the complainant like to address the board? Which would you, Fran?
Fran.
Fran, would you like to address the board?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm having some difficulty hearing. There's somebody shuffling some papers perhaps in the background. Maybe they could go on mute. Yeah, I appreciate this. Well, notably here, there's two issues. One, of course, being the timing. And in my written response that I hope was included in the packet that you had a chance to review, I addressed that in some detail. But specifically, or generally, during that first quarter of 2022, I was dealing with COVID in my immediate and extended family while dealing with the challenges of supervising my 6-year-old twins in remote learning. And, you know, under that umbrella of COVID and all the issues it caused, if COVID was an adequate justification for the governor to not follow open records law, you know, particularly considering the employees under her supervision, then it ought to be adequate for a weary mom without resources in Council Bluffs. So, again, I detailed some of that. I'm happy to answer your questions on the timing. Then, kind of moving over to the probable cause on that, I take great exception to that. There have been a total of 5 closed hearings that have been released following my request. I think one of them is captured over here in the dismissal order. Essentially, while the county did provide the notice of the meeting and a tentative agenda, there was not the level of detail that would properly inform the citizens of Potawatomi County of what exactly the supervisors were considering. And this is after the supervisors voted over a week prior to proceed with the transaction that included a non-refundable $130,000 down payment. The county refers only to the resolution number, and that resolution did not provide the details that would have enabled folks in the public like me to know at a glance what the scope of what the county was considering, and notably even just the property and the pricing. The lack of adequate notice to the public about the proposed purchase of over twice the fair market value deprived the citizens of Potawatomi County an opportunity to weigh in on this deal. And I'll be honest, it mocks public meeting laws. Folks like me cannot engage with their government when officials skip over the opportunity to adequately inform the public. There were no other potential buyers lining up to own a ski resort in Iowa. And by the county attorney's own words, taken from one of the closed meeting minutes, if I was Matt Wilbur, private investor looking for a business to buy, I would never buy this business at this price. So the property was overvalued at the proposed price. There was no risk the price was going to be driven upward, and the public was left in the dark.
Board have any questions of the complaints?
I can certainly answer questions for the board. I mean, I understand that that the complainant does not agree with the actions that were taken, but what we look at is whether or not there was a proper notice, whether there was a proper reason to go into a closed session. If these were even within that 60 days, that would be what we would be looking at, not whether she or we would agree with the purchase price of a piece of property. But I just think looking at the totality of the entire situation and what happened here, you can always give more notice, but we only have to look at did you give the notice as required by state law. In this case, I did not see that it rose to the point of being a violation.
Anyone else?
Yeah, question. The open meeting on December 21st after the closed session, were the agreements on the agenda for that meeting?
The issue was on, but I don't think the actual documents were on. What it was is they authorized that they could go forward with that purchase, and that the board chair would then be able to sign all the paperwork, and then found out later that
In a closed session.
the actual
In a closed session.
they had a closed session meeting, but they came out of the closed session meeting to take that action.
I'm just wondering when were the purchase agreements, or purchase agreement, when was that actually on an open agenda?
That would have been on the 29th or 30th. They went into closed session to talk about the agenda item, but when they came out, they voted to go forward with the documents discussed, with the offer discussed, and authorize the board chair to sign the paperwork if that offer was accepted. And the closing company said that wasn't sufficient. You have to have an actual open meeting and do that. And so I don't particularly agree with Mr. Wilbur's description of this being ministerial, but that's, I don't think, relevant to the issue here. I think, they had noticed, they posted it properly, and it was like on a short notice basis. It was just 24 hours because they didn't think they needed to have a meeting at all until the day of the proposed closing, and then found out that they were going to have to.
So at that
do it
meeting
again.
on the 30th, was the purchase agreement on the agenda?
Yes,
It was on that night?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the details of the purchase
It was
were,
not, it was not on the agenda. It was not on the agenda. On the 30th, the only item on the agenda was the resolution.
The resolution authorizing
The
purchase
resolution
of.
contained the exhibits that included the purchase agreement.
Let's let Margaret respond, and then you'll have an opportunity, ma'am.
If you look on the first page of the proposed order, that section A that's in italics, that was what was on the agenda. And then they had the resolutions there during the open session, and that was the only topic. That was the only thing that was on. But they did not post the resolutions with the agenda, but they were there at the meeting, and it was discussed in open. There wasn't a lot of discussion because they'd already, the terms that they had offered were accepted.
Ma'am,
Margaret, just for clarification, so the previous speaker asked if the details of the purchase agreement was on some sort of, on the agenda, attachment to the agenda that the public would be able to go through and read after the closed session, but before the resolution was passed. And I'm not understanding that. Was it or was it not the purchase agreement, details of the purchase agreement available
The
to
actual
the public on this?
Joan, it was not posted on the bulletin board along with the agenda. The agenda just had that descriptive paragraph that's on the first page of the order and did not have copies of the agreement, the purchase agreements and so forth posted with it.
So what would be then precedent as to what might be expected by a body going into closed session and then coming out and voting on an item? What might be, give me some examples of how that might occur, or just help me understand.
Okay, the closed session did not occur on the 30th. The closed session occurred on December 21st. And that had basically the same sort of information on that agenda as well. It did not say for the Mount Crescent ski area at a purchase price and the adjoining buildings at a purchase price of so-and-so, and including a leaseback agreement that contained these terms. The full document, because it was a pretty lengthy document, was not attached.
And what you're saying is that it didn't need to be available to the public in the open session when they voted on it?
It was available to the public at the session. It was not posted, but it was available
Gotcha.
at. But my understanding is that
If I may, the purchase agreement was not available. The resolution was available.
but the resolution,
Well, could I ask what would, go ahead, Margaret.
my understanding is that if anybody had asked for it, it was there and could have, because it had already been submitted to closing. So the resolution was the purpose of doing it, and the resolution outlined the agreement or the purchase agreement and the leaseback agreement.
So the terms of the purchase agreement were reflected in the resolution.
Yeah, not the full terms, but just, like, I think we've got that somewhere in here.
Miss, could I ask Miss Mears was? If that's what Margaret is saying, is that your understanding? Because I'm hearing like two different things. So the resolution contains the same information that was in the purchase agreement?
No, it missed some essential information. The resolution contained the legal description and that it was going to be purchased. It did not contain any sum pricing, lump sum pricing, any pricing whatsoever. And it was deficient on stating what was going to happen to the decision made by the county.
So the resolution, as I know, when we pass resolutions, it's actually the motion, and if the resolution is the motion and it's moved and seconded and then voted on. So I don't know, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this. If anyone else wants to add something or bring out something that could help me, I entertain that.
Well, and I think we have to first agree that she had good cause for not filing this timely, and that we have jurisdiction on something that's beyond the statute.
I understand that. So where the dismissal is because of it has to be a dismissal because of the time frame. Is that right?
That's what I've got in the order, that it's, the statute specifically says what our jurisdictional limitations are, and that taking action on something that we statutorily and legally don't have jurisdiction on could cause some issues.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
And you guys are far smarter than I am. I'm just a knucklehead out here, Council Bluff. It's the executive branch can not meet their statutory obligations with FOI stuff. I'm kind of, and there's some allowance there, or that's used as a justification for why they couldn't. I don't understand why that wouldn't be extended to somebody like me with none of the resources and under the same circumstances.
We don't have jurisdiction over the governor's office either.
If I understand what Ms. Mears is saying, so I'm going to ask this: is it possible to dismiss because we can't look into it because it's past the timeline, yet somehow provide some direction or counsel regarding what might be appropriate in that situation in terms of transparency and availability to the public, Margaret? I'm just throwing that out there. Or would we have to accept it before you would be able to provide some information?
You could certainly, Joan, you could certainly move to delete that paragraph that starts with, on the second page with "even if the complaint had been timely filed," and then under the ordered section you could take out without merit, and so it's just dismissed as beyond the jurisdiction of the IPIB. I could certainly call Mr. Wilbur and explain what the board's thoughts were on that.
Well, the paragraph you're talking about, even if the complaint had been timely filed, concludes that even so there was no violation.
Right, that was my recommendation. Yeah, my legal analysis. I'm just asking Joan, or telling Joan that
Right, no, but I'm
the
saying,
board could certainly amend it.
saying there's a conclusion in that paragraph other than it wasn't timely. I guess that's my point.
Right.
Yeah, we're not looking at whether they followed the proper procedure in approving a purchase agreement. We're just looking at the Chapter 21 issues related to that.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Because I have some questions about the way they approved that agreement, but that's not really the issue in the case. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's asking, is there leniency because of COVID, correct?
Correct, because she didn't find out about this for another 34 days
So how do
after
we,
everybody else.
So that's 23.7.
Yeah.
23.7?
Yeah, 23.7 sub 1.
I will,
And it's actually
I
on
will
your
share
on your
your-
order as well, down at the bottom, the
if
italics.
I may just, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, I don't quite know how.
Yeah, if you start there. Yeah, we're just trying to, I'm trying to answer questions that the board has.
We'll come back in a minute. Here, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, if you, Jackie, if you start there and then it continues on to the next page, that's the actual statute. We've had laws, amendments filed with the legislature for the last 4 years, trying to expand that 60 days, and
Right.
we've not been successful,
Successful doing that. Even through COVID.
even through COVID.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of modifications that were made
Yeah.
during with the proclamations that the governor made, that expanding our jurisdiction was not ever included in any of those proclamations.
Fran, do you have any other comments at this point?
I'm sorry, you speaking to me again?
Yeah, did you want to say something? I cut you off there, and so
Yeah.
we were discussing the issue.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight for me to understand what this purchase was, to understand, not just the physical parcels and that there was going to be a purchase, but I had retrieved the purchase agreement from the recorder's office. That was something that was in the official record in the recorder's office in late January. So the piece that I was missing, the piece that I had to go and retrieve, physically go and go up to the recording window and retrieve was not submitted until late January. The purchase agreement.
Right, because that's when it was completed, when the
Yeah.
purchase was agreement. They would not file the actual contract until such time as the contract was executed and the terms were completed on the contract. You can't find copies of house purchases until such time as it's completed and it's filed with the county.
And the purchase agreement was not included with the resolution.
The resolution said, and we've got it here, but the resolution said that whereas on December 21st, the Potawatomi County Board of Supervisors met in closed session to discuss potential purchase of property from Corby and Samantha Fleischer and Double Diamond Incorporated, specifically assessor parcel number, and it says 17026 Snow Hill Lane, ski resort, assessor parcel number 5.75 acres, triangle parcel, assessor parcel number given 17034 Snow Hill Lane, assessor parcel number 763.05 acres, Snow Hill Lane roadway, assessor parcel another number 1.43 acres, and assessor parcel another number 17019 Snow Hill Lane, and substantially all business assets of the businesses presently being operated as a Mount Crescent ski area, which pretty much, that describes what was.
That's in the resolution.
That's in the resolution. That's the resolution that was before that was there and voted on and on the agenda. Well, it wasn't attached to the agenda, but was part of the meeting on December 30th.
Any other discussion? Joan, do you have any comments?
Well, I'm understanding a little bit better what Margaret had said, that if I wanted to make the motion be leaving out the without merit part, I guess you're saying that you would be amenable to that. But I do understand that
if we can't go further with it because it's not within the time frame. So I've got all my questions answered.
Any other comment? Barry? Anyone else?
Just, I will say I did struggle with a legal definition of reasonable diligence that's in the code. So I did just look over and say, well, what other considerations are being given for other folks who have to either provide information or that was a struggle. Say what's reasonable diligence? That is in the code, and I think that's under your authority.
It's not going to change anything, but that's, you know, if I get, I see my mad here, but I don't think it's going to.
Any other thoughts from the board? Is there any particular change to the proposed motion, the recommendation that's being made? I think the timing issue is kind of keeps us going any further. That's at least what appears to me anyway. And I think some of the issues that the complainant has raised are probably beyond our jurisdictions. I don't know if we can do much.
Well, I think that paragraph is still accurate. It says there's no violation of Iowa Code Chapter 21.
Right.
So.
The statements that the county attorney has given in his response have been contradicted by the closed session.
She says that there's things, the tapes and everything from the closed sessions are now public record, and she's asked, she has another complaint pending on that.
Oh, okay. But is there a motion?
I move to approve the dismissal order as written.
Second.
A motion and a second. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 I
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you very much. I think we are dealing with a jurisdiction issue, and I think we did the best we could under the circumstances, so thank you.
thank you.
Next issue is Olson, Kevin Dennis, and the city of West Des Moines.
I am connected in through your conference because I have to mute myself.
But you'll be on the line?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Sorry, I will allot more in-person time next time.
and you keep your dog from barking, will you please?
And no dogs barking, I am on your time.
Thank you.
And in the event you do drop off, just say I'm dropping. Then
Got
we'll
it.
know not to look for you.
Love it, thank you.
Well, don't lose hope.
No,
Sir.
she's going to participate.
I know, but as if she drops off.
Yeah, we're almost done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
I
almost
promise
back.
I'll stay with you.
Everything covered.
I promise I'll be with you.
All right.
Call if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, why don't you call, because we can't go back on until we're sure you're on the line.
Yep, I'm on.
You are? Okay.
Yep.
All right. We can proceed with item 9.
All right, this is case number 22FC0030. Kevin Dennis Olson as the complainant in the city of West Des Moines as respondent. This was filed on April 7th of 2022, alleging that the city of West Des Moines violated Iowa Code Chapter 22 on January 31st, 2022. He alleged that he was stopped on his way home on January 31st by a city law enforcement employee for a non-working taillight, and that he was improperly stopped and his vehicle searched without authority. He also alleged a violation of civil rights. When he was asked for information, including what his public records request might have been, He amended his complaint to allege that on April 4th, he requested copies of the oaths of office for city council members, the chief of police, and expired copies like you first sent me for Russ Trimble and Tom Stiles. And that's a quote from his record request. He included a copy of the response he received from the city clerk on April 6th. Included in the response were copies of signed oaths of office of all elected officials and the chief of police, as well as copies of the public official bonds for the mayor and the finance director. On April 11th, he sent another email alleging that the bonds he received were outdated and did not meet state and federal requirements. On April 19th, legal counsel for the city provided a chart of the 8 record requests received between February 17th and April 6th, and including copies of the records that were released. This information was also provided to Mr. Olson. He then stated on April 19th that the bonds, copies of the bonds that were provided by the city had expired in violation of federal law, and he wished us to determine whether or not it was in fact a violation of federal law. I've listed there the jurisdiction of the IPIB, and it is restricted to matters involving chapters 21 and 22. We do not have jurisdiction over the evaluation or enforcement of federal statutes concerning bond requirements or violations of civil rights. He got the copies of the records in possession of the city, that the city possessed, and there is no violation of Iowa Code Chapter 22. I would ask that it be dismissed as beyond the jurisdiction of the IPIB and as being without merit.
Is there anyone on the line that would speak to this? Anyone here? Any board? Any questions, comments? Is there a motion?
Move to approve the dismissal order.
Moved by Barry. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
You take your pick. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Did Jackie vote?
Jackie, did you vote?
I said aye.
Okay. Joan? We didn't hear, we only heard one. Joan?
No, I voted at the same time, yes, at my design.
Okay.
We like you voting in stereo.
Yeah. All right, next item is Shakely Clifford, Dubuque County. Acceptance order.
Great. Is that how it's pronounced? Shakely? Okay. All right, this is case number 22FC0026 involving a complaint filed by Cliff Shakely as a complainant and Dubuque County as a respondent. This is before you as an acceptance order. He filed his complaint on March 30th, alleging that Dubuque County violated Iowa Code Chapter 22 by charging excessive fees for copies of public records he requested. On March 28th, he requested a copy of Geographical Information System, or GIS, files, including owner name, parcel number, deeded acres, situs, mailing addresses, city boundaries, and address points. He alleged that the project coordinator for the county quoted a price of $5,244.50 for the records based upon a per unit cost of 10 cents per record for the 52,445 records. He asked for information concerning how the fee determination was reached and was advised that the coordinator had spoken with each member of the Board of Supervisors independently, and the consensus is you pay our fees or you do not get our data. He charges that, or alleges that the fee is excessive and not based upon the actual costs to fulfill the request, and that fulfilling the request should take no more than 15 minutes of time. The county responded to the complaint on April 14th, saying that 22.2 sub 4 provides an exception to the use of actual costs in determining the fee for a public record. On April 29th, the county added that other counties use the same fee formula. Mr. Shakely stated that other counties have provided this information to him at no charge. On May 5th, the Dubuque County Attorney provided a copy of the GIS data and service cost sheet, which you will have and see attached, which outlines a number of, outlines basically the costs that they have assigned to various records that are produced by the GIS data and service. He also added that other counties use this fee formula, and specifically Jones, Plymouth, and Hancock counties are among others that maintain a uniform set of fees similar to Dubuque County. Iowa Code Section 22.2 sub 4 sub A states that a government body is not required to permit access to or use of the following, and one of them is a geographic computer database by any person except upon terms and conditions acceptable to the governing body. The governing body shall establish reasonable rates and procedures, and I did that emphasis, for the retrieval of these specified records. And Iowa Code Section 22.32 says that fees should be reasonable and based upon the actual cost of fulfilling a record request. In particular, the lawful custodian may charge a reasonable fee for the services of the lawful custodian or the custodian's authorized designee in supervising the examination, and they shall not exceed the actual cost of providing the service. Both the cited code sections require that fees charged be reasonable. At issue in this complaint is whether the fee quoted to Mr. Shakley is reasonable. Then, as we'll talk about a little later, but on May 2nd, 2022, the governor of Iowa signed Senate Bill File 2322, an act relating to the assessment of fees. This is not effective until July 1st, but there will be some guidance in terms of whether or not fees are reasonable. And that is listed there for you and is in boldface. It says, although fulfillment of the request for a copy of a record may be contingent upon receipt of payment of reasonable expenses, the lawful custodian shall make every reasonable effort to provide the public record request at no cost other than copying costs for a record which takes less than 30 minutes to produce. And all reasonable expenses of the examination and copying shall be paid by the person. The lawful custodian may charge a reasonable fee. So as you see, reasonable is listed throughout that. I'm recommending that we accept this because while it may not be actionable right at this moment, it is a question that's going to be, we're going to be addressing a lot in the next few months, probably next year. And so I think this is an opportunity to start on that issue at this point in time. And we can, when I spoke to the county attorney for Dubuque County, he indicated that he was more than willing and interested in working with us to try to come up with something that would be of benefit not just to Dubuque County, but to all counties in Iowa.
Comments?
My only,
Please speak. You have to
get a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah, you have to get closer, and your name for the record.
my name is Cliff Shakley. I'm the owner of Farm and Home Publishers. We publish county plat books in 13 states. I request this information all across the Midwest, in all 99 counties in the state of Iowa. Right now, we have 2 counties that we're running into this problem with. One wants $5,200, one wants $450. The rest I'm getting for nothing. So there's such a wide disparity on the charges. It's ridiculous. If I'm the GIS coordinator and the actual cost at $5,200, my specialist, Joe Simons with Terran Geospecialist, which is my developer, says it takes about actually 5 minutes to copy these files and upload them to the FPP site. You take 5 minutes into an hour at $5,200, I want that job. At $60,000 an hour, I'll go back to school to be a GIS specialist. Reasonable fees are the actual cost to the county, not what they think that the information is for. Because we all agree this is public information. Now it just comes down to what does it cost the county to fulfill my request. And so my assumption is majority of the counties that I request this from, I get it at no cost. $5,200 for 5 minutes worth of work is beyond reasonable fees. Thank you.
I don't think Mr. May was going to be on the phone, but he might be.
Is there anyone on the phone from Dubuque County on this issue? Apparently not.
I think they looked at it more as like a licensing type of a deal instead of as a public records, and they should be looking at it as a public records matter.
It looks like an opportunity to clear the air.
Yeah.
As a side note, they actually pay a company to publish it digitally, and that company will sell it back to me for about $18,000. So, I mean, the fees for public records is just There is none. And I actually have emails that documents that their company, Schneider Beacon, which publishes it online, you've looked at it, they will resell that information back to me for 35 cents a parcel.
Okay. Any comments?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, who's speaking, please?
Hi, my name is Joe Simons. I am a geospatial consultant. I have about 23 years of experience in this field, and I just wanted to chime in to kind of give you an overview of the process, the actual process, what it takes. I looked at Dubuque's website. I know that the software, what it's based off of, is using what's on the ESRI ArcGIS server software.
Excuse me,
The
Joe.
process to
Joe,
that data.
hello. Excuse me. We appreciate that information. It's just a little premature right now. That will be something that will be taken up if the board accepts this recommendation to proceed with the case. Then that's the place where that input will be helpful. I don't mean to cut you off, but it's like I say,
no, that's fine.
There'll be an opportunity, and your information, I'm sure, will be helpful to staff as they ferret through this issue. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's fine, and we can certainly discuss, you can provide your information to the IPID staff because that'll be helpful while we're negotiating and determining what an appropriate fee should be.
Apparently, Dubuque County is not resisting the acceptance order, as I understand it. So this is an opportunity for us maybe to be helpful in creating a system for fees. But anyway, I don't mean to cut the board off. Barry?
No.
Okay. Joel, anything?
No.
So is there anyone else had anything to add? Okay, let's entertain a motion to accept the recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Barry and Joel, you guys are famous. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Wait, you gotta get Joe.
Aye.
All right, Joan, Jackie?
Aye.
Good, thank you. Now, the next one is Jack Swarm and Mount Pleasant City Council. Thank you for waiting. Appreciate it.
Yeah, just a second, I need to do a note here. My tiles stand straight. All right, this is case number 22FC0011. It involves Jack Swarm as a complainant and Mount Pleasant City Council as the respondent. It's before the board on my recommendation for an acceptance order. This complaint was filed on February 28, 2022, alleging a violation of Iowa Code Chapter 21 on January 12th of 2022. On that date, Mr. Swarm alleged that the council held a closed session during a public meeting in violation of Iowa Code Section 21.5. He alleged that 4 of 6 council members voted to go into closed session for the purpose outlined on the agenda as pursuant to 21.5(1)(c) to discuss strategy with counsel in matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent, where its disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the governmental body in that litigation. 2 council members were absent. And then I quoted in the footnote the entire code section, which is basically what was also on the agenda. Following the closed session, the council voted in open session to remove an employee from his employment pursuant to Iowa Code Section 372.15. That was item 9H on the agenda as noted in the minutes of the meeting. Mr. Swarm stated removed employee filed an appeal, resulting in appeal hearings on both February 9th and February 23rd. The council voted unanimously to uphold that removal. He also saw the employee's termination letter that was dated January 13th, and that letter listed the mayor, sheriff, and all council members as approving the removal. He alleged that the council should not have placed the names of the 2 absent council members on this letter as they did not attend the January 12, 2022 meeting. He alleged it was a violation of Iowa Code Section 21.5 to use this subsection rather than using subsection 21.5 sub 1 sub I. And I have put that for you for your information as footnote number 4. Legal counsel for the city council responded to the complaint on March 14th. Council stated that she was present by telephone at the January 12th meeting and that subsection 1C was appropriate. She stated during the meeting, legal counsel for the city provided the city with attorney-client privileged legal advice concerning an employee matter that would probably result in litigation. And then, although we don't have jurisdiction over Iowa Code Chapter 372, for your convenience, I've listed Iowa Code Section 372.15 that provides the process for removing a city employee. Legal counsel stated there were various ways to address the issue presented during the closed session. Citing attorney-client privilege, counsel stated that as the attorney for the council, it was important that the legal ramification of all decisions, including litigation, be discussed so that the council was fully advised prior to making the decision. She added that the council has not waived attorney-client privilege and provided sworn affidavits from the city clerk and the city administrator in support of the use of Section 21.51C and to confirm that attorney-client privilege has not been waived. In a reply dated March 21st, Mr. Swarm alleged that the closed session resulted in an employee discharge. Therefore, it was required that they use 21.5 sub 1 sub I, and he provided copies of the disciplinary report, records, and media reports in support of his position. On April 4th, legal counsel responded that until she was able to fully discuss the legal ramification of various actions that the council could take, the council did not know what action would be most appropriate. The code section 21.5 subsection 1 lists 12 reasons to allow a closed session. There are certain situations, such as this one, that could fall within more than one subsection. The only subsection that specifically provides for the opportunity to discuss the legal ramification of an action with legal counsel with the protection of attorney-client privilege is subsection 21.5 sub 1 sub C. Given the specific nature of this closed session, it was not a violation of Iowa Code Chapter 21 for the council to meet in the closed session for that purpose. During the initial review of the agenda and minutes of the January 12, 2022 meeting, other violations of Iowa Code Chapter 21 were discovered. Iowa Code Section 21.5 sub 2 requires that the vote of each member on the question of holding the closed session be publicly announced during the open meeting, and Iowa Code Section 21.3 requires that the minutes of a meeting show the result of each vote taken and information sufficient to indicate the vote of each member present. The minutes from the January 12, 2022 meeting show that a member of the council moved to go into closed session and another member seconded the motion. No vote is noted in the minutes. This is necessary because Iowa Code Section 21.51 requires an affirmative public vote of either 2/3 of the members of the body or all the members present to hold a closed session. This issue was brought to the attention of both the complainant and the city council's legal counsel, and subsequent to that, to notifying them of that, the city council has determined that they did have a proper vote. It was just not noted in the record of the minutes that were subsequently approved, so they're now taking steps to amend those minutes to show the actual vote that occurred. However, my recommendation is that it's be accepted so that we can participate or assist the city in determining maybe a checklist of some sort so that they make certain that they go into their closed sessions appropriately, and that they do the minutes appropriately so that this mistake wouldn't happen in the future. But there's nothing that would say after the review of the actual allegation that was initially made on the violation. It's my recommendation that was not a violation. And I do know Mr. Swarm is here, and legal counsel for the city, for Mount Pleasant City Council is also present.
Swarm, would like to address the board?
Yeah, before the meeting, I was told that
You'll have to,
the city would go first.
I said, since I was doing acceptance, I figured the board would probably want to hear from the city first. Do
however, that's fine, council.
Flexible.
you want to,
Yep, I'll come up here. Do you mind if I just stand next to that guy?
That's fine.
So I can see. So I got some notes for you all. I want to first say thank you for listening to my comments here today. First, as a procedural matter, the acceptance of this complaint has to do with how the minutes were kept for the January 12th meeting. Mr. Swarm's complaint involved the January 12th meeting, so he had notice of that. We didn't get notice of this violation. This violation is not in Mr. Swarm's complaint, and it's my understanding that Chapter 23 only allows you guys to accept, this board, not you guys, excuse me, to accept Mr. Swarm's complaint, not to accept other ancillary violations that sit out there. In addition, we didn't get notice of that alleged violation until April 25th, which is outside the 60-day jurisdiction, even if you're looking at the approval of the minutes, which happened on January 26th. So I think as a procedural matter, the one accepted issue is outside this board's jurisdiction. Now, when we were alerted to that procedural matter, we corrected it. The council has already amended the minutes to reflect that the vote was taken for each member to go into closed session. We've submitted those to the board, so you should have those. And those minutes, the minutes on the amendment will be approved at the next meeting, the next city council meeting. So just at the outset, as a procedural matter, I would ask that the board make a motion to dismiss this case rather than accept the complaint for purposes of a checklist or anything like that. I think the city is well aware that there was a cleral error here and that it won't happen again. With respect to Mr. Swarm's complaints, there's nothing in Iowa Code Chapter 21.5 that exempts out employment matters from those imminent litigation or actual litigation matters that we can talk about in closed session. And all of Mr. Swarm's complaints and responses seem to contemplate that those should not be included, or there should be some sort of exception for employment matters, and that's just not the case. I agree with the decision that the executive director has set forth on those issues, and I would ask that you dismiss the complaint on those issues also. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, that's all I have now. I would ask, potentially if there's new issues raised by Mr. Swarm to rebut those, just since I have went first as the defendant today.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Swarm.
I'm Jack Swarm. I'm the complainant. I do agree that the issue of the minutes is fully resolved. Actually, my recollection of the meeting is that all 4 members present voted to go into closed session. And then I was at the city council meeting where the minutes were amended. And so I don't have any problem with that. I actually work for the city, and I know that procedurally the city definitely wants to comply with procedures. And so I don't think that any kind of training or checklist is, while that would be fine and good, I don't think that it's necessary. I think that the city knows exactly what they need to do. The city always records minutes in such a manner that votes are clearly discernible. It was a wild oddity that the votes on this one particular vote were not recorded. And so I agree with Ms. Corkery in that regards. Now, however, to the bulk of the acceptance order, which effectively dismisses my complaint, I disagree. And what I would say is that this matter really boils down to one specific question. Is a governmental body permitted to consider in closed session a related matter to the specific reason announced for entering the closed session. If the answer is yes, that they are allowed to consider related matters, I would wonder to what degree must a second matter be related to the original reason for entering the closed session? At what point should discussion stop in a closed session because the conversation has strayed too far from the original matter given? And I would also say, who gets to decide the degree of relation between the related matter and the original reason given for entering closed session? I was at the closed session. I was at the city council meeting for the closed session. My personal experience was, I was aware of the disciplinary issue. I was watching the city council agenda for the disciplinary issue. When I saw that the city council was going into closed session to discuss legal strategy, I thought, good. They're not talking about him today. So, the proposed order before you, in which all my complaints are dismissed, relies on the assumption that the police officer's termination is related to the reason for entering closed session. The reason for entering closed session was billed to the public as to discuss strategy with counsel in matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent, where its disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the governmental body. So to be clear, it is assumed that the termination and the discussing of strategy with legal counsel were related, and therefore it's legitimate to use the reason the city council gave for entering closed session. Now, do we have any evidence to this relationship between the two matters? No. We only have the city council or the city attorney's word for it. And may I point out that the reason that the Iowa law requires voice recording of closed session is so that the board, this board, the state ombudsman, or the courts can verify that governmental bodies follow the rules given. And so one request I have of you is to investigate the matter further, listen to the minutes, and see if there was a relationship. Back to the original question that I have. Is a governmental body permitted to consider in closed session a related matter to the specific reason given for entering the closed session? Iowa Code never says that. What Iowa Code does say in 21.52 is, a government body shall not discuss any business during a closed session which does not directly relate to the specific reason announced as justification for entering the closed session. It does not say that a government body may discuss related matters. It only says that a governmental body shall not discuss related matters. So nowhere is a governmental body given permission to discuss related matters. Some, in interpreting Iowa Code 21, citing ambiguity, interpret 21.52, which I just read to you, to mean just that. Because a body shall not discuss unrelated matters, the governmental body is permitted to discuss related matters. Now, I have three reasons why I think that that's a wrong interpretation of Iowa Code 21. Number one, Iowa Code 21.1, the very first section, tells us how to resolve ambiguity, and it tells us how to interpret the chapter. It says, ambiguity in the construction or application of this chapter shall be resolved in the favor of openness. So when we're interpreting, we're always going towards openness, not towards closed. The code is telling us, so by interpreting the code to mean that because a government body shall not discuss unrelated matters, it is permitted to discuss related matters, you are interpreting the code in favor of more closed government and less open government, which I think clearly violates Iowa Code 21.1. Another reason, Iowa Code 21.3.1 tells us that meetings shall be held in open session unless closed sessions are expressly permitted by law. Expressly is a very strong word, and I think it means extremely, exactly, or very specifically. So, when a governmental body tells the public that they are going into closed session to discuss strategy, but then discusses other things, it completely renders meaningless this term expressly, very specifically, very exactly.
Sure. We usually let people go about 5 minutes and you're over that, so
Okay, I was just noting that conversation in the...
kind of wind it up. If you would.
I will. And I'll give you a copy of this for your record. So one wonders why the legislature would even put that word expressly in the law if it didn't really mean expressly. Number 3, Iowa Code 21.5 strongly limits the use of closed session when it says a governmental body may hold a closed session only to the extent a closed session is necessary for any of the following. The term only to the extent is very important. It limits the way a closed session may be used to the reason given to the public. In our case, discussing strategy with legal counsel is the extent to which the Iowa Code limits the use of a closed session. And so to discuss other matters, such as an employee's performance, abuses that term only to the extent necessary. At this point, somebody might object, and they might say that an open discussion of an employee's performance might prejudice or disadvantage a governmental body in litigation. And I have 2 answers to that. That may be so.
Would you please get to the point?
Yes.
He was told 5 minutes too.
Yes, but I would like to note that the previous matter, the speakers had much more than 5 minutes.
Well, they were responding to questions.
A comment.
We're being kind.
Okay. Number 1, if there is a relationship between the matter of litigation and the employee's performance, an examination of the recorded minutes would demonstrate that very clearly. And so I ask you to pursue this further and to examine the minutes. It would be very simple. It would preserve privilege between the city and the client, and it could possibly resolve this matter very easily. Number 2, in our case, there's another way to know the city council did not keep private any of the employee's performance, which was a subject of discussion in the closed session. The city released that information to the employee. I have that information. The city council made statements to the newspaper. And also the city allowed the officer to speak openly about this in 2 subsequent appeal hearings. So to say that his performance was a matter of strategy that needed to be kept quiet in order to not disadvantage the city in present litigation or in possible litigation is just silly, because it's open to the public. And so why it needed to be discussed in closed session, I have no idea. To close, I have a report from the Iowa Ombudsman from a couple years ago that investigated this body. The Ombudsman concluded his report by saying, in this particular circumstance, that the board disappointingly focuses almost entirely on what the board can do under a narrow interpretation of the law, rather than considering what the board should do to promote government transparency and accountability. And I agree with the Ombudsman. And so if and when the board would say something like, it's not illegal to discuss a related topic, I would argue that the board is using a narrow interpretation of the code to promote closed government. Iowa Code 2021 specifically says you must interpret for openness, not more government business being conducted behind closed doors. And so I ask you simply to investigate.
Thank you.
Would all of you like a copy of what I just read?
That would be helpful. Who would like to comment?
Can I just briefly use the rest of my time to respond to a couple points? One, Iowa Code Section 372.15, for those of you that may not be familiar with government bodies, it requires us to provide a notice of removal, an order of removal is what it's called. It's not a termination letter. It's required under the code when we remove an appointed official. We're also required to allow that person to talk about whatever they want to talk about for an appeal in open session. So those are requirements under the code that that body would have to comply with. The second point I just want to make on these issues is you have evidence that the board went into closed session to discuss legal strategy with counsel about matters of imminent litigation, and you have evidence that they didn't speak about anything unrelated to that during the session. The sworn affidavits of the city clerk and the city administrator both attest to that. They were attached to my initial response. So this board has the evidence they need. There's no need for the city to break its attorney-client privilege, which would be an extreme measure to take in this case. And I would ask again that you dismiss this complaint outright against the city. Thank you.
And just as a point of order, if the board wants additional language in the order, changing it from acceptance to dismissal, adding different things for acceptance or adding different things for dismissal, that would be a time when you probably want to table this with directions to staff, because we would need to have, I would need to have time to draft an appropriate order rather than just try to figure out after the fact and then you would look at it at the June meeting. That's what we used to do with those sort of issues.
Any board discussion?
I have a question for the statement, third, fourth paragraph. Council voted in open session to remove an employee from his employment. Is that from Mr. Swarm's employment?
No, it's a different person.
No.
It's not Mr. Swan.
It's
It's a colleague, I guess, would probably be
No.
another employee. Another employee.
As a police officer, I don't work with him at all.
Okay, but you work for the city of Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so does he.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not Mr. Swarm's employee. That's the way I...
Right, right.
Okay. Question for council. Was this the 37215 hearing?
No. So this was, I want to be careful about how I respond to this because I don't want to break their privilege. The council went into closed session, discussed strategy with legal counsel and options in we all know it's an employment matter. Afterward, they voted to remove the employee pursuant to 372.15, which is required under the statute that the appointing body also remove. And there was sort of a, there was some hand wringing about who appoints here, but to be safe, we had the council make that removal.
And then was the employee given notice under 37215?
Correct, he received a 372.15. One, the employee had already had a due process meeting prior to that. Then received a 372.15 order of removal, and then had the opportunity in public session, was given 2 hearings to come speak about his removal and appeal that per the statute.
Okay, got it, thank you.
May I ask a question? Has the board had opportunity to read all of my complaint documents?
No, we don't at this point in time. Not with a proposed acceptance.
The board has not read my complaint
No,
documents?
this was not a hearing today. This was just a review of the initial order to either accept or dismiss pursuant to Iowa Code Section 23.8. They don't have, until they accept a complaint, they don't have the jurisdiction over that issue. So it's a summation of, and plus they don't have any jurisdiction to determine whether or not a removal was done appropriately under 372 sub 15.
So the board has not even read my complaint letter?
They read your complaint letter, yes, that was sent to them.
Okay, were you able to read my complaint letter?
Well, it was sent out some time ago, sure.
Right, it was on or about February 28th.
Were the new board members able to read my complaint letter?
They would not have had that. So Mr. McCrae did not have that, and Jackie Shulman did not.
May I please ask that this get tabled until they're able to read my complaint letter?
No, he's talking about the initial complaint. You're talking about what you filed on February 28th.
Yeah,
is
there's
that
two
right?
brand new board members here. If they haven't had a chance to read my complaint letter, I would just ask that this get tabled until they can read my complaint letter and make an educated vote on whether to accept or to deny this complaint.
How does the board feel?
Well, I've got a legal question for council or for
Go ahead.
what would the remedy be if the board concluded that should have been, the motion to go into closed session should have been under 25C and 25I?
Oh, that they should have had both of them on there? Probably, it would, what we look at first, because we work with remediation to, have some sort of, we try to get an informal resolution, but it would be to address the allegation that the closed session was not properly noticed, if they should have had both things on there, or was not properly conducted. Normally, all that ever happens with those in the past that we've had, that kind of thing, is that it's determined that it wasn't a properly closed session, so the recording and the minutes are made public.
So
That's it.
Mr. Swarm's complaint really is that it should have been, the motion should have been under
25
25,
sub I,
yeah,
yeah.
aye.
That's not exactly my complaint. My complaint is that something else other than strategy was discussed. That's my
Well,
complaint.
I don't think there's any question but that you can discuss legal strategy on whether or not what to do about an employment situation and use that as a section. You have to have specific, there's 4 things that you have to have specifically under I, and one of them is that the individual involved has to agree to the closed session. Not that that person gets to attend, but just that has to agree to that session. But legal counsel and determining whether or not what their legal options are can be for any number of reasons. It doesn't have to be, there's nothing specific it has to be about. It could be for any reason.
Yeah, I agree. And then it's when they went back and they discussed performance of the guy's job. And if you read my complaint, the complaint has the termination letter, which lists causes going back to a year prior. And
Right. That's not something that we would be.
it's a piece of evidence because it demonstrates that we were talking about employee performance in the closed session. And then the question is that related to discussion of legal strategy? And I think it stretches the term, stretches the plain understanding of Iowa.
Then what would you
21.
go into that section to discuss? If you weren't going to discuss with your attorney and have attorney-client privilege to talk about legal strategy on any decision?
I mean, it's kind of hypothetical, and I don't know the specifics of the situation, but I imagine it being something like this. We've got a problem guy here.
We had one, this would have been back in maybe 2016, where we had it was Red Oak Community School District, where they went into a closed session under subsection C, but they were talking about a principal and trying to decide how they were going to legally deal with the situation that had arisen with this principal. So to some extent, they were talking about actions and behaviors of the principal. So turns out that they didn't probably do it correctly in terms of the code section that talks with how you go about dealing with a principal that you aren't going to extend their contract. But the fact that they went in to discuss legal strategy, part of that was to what are our options? If we have concerns about one of our employees, what are our options? And it was a discussion on here are your options, and it's up to you to decide which one that you want to take. So we found that they did not violate Iowa Code 21.5 because they were talking about what their options were to deal with a situation involving an employee, but it happened to be, an employee. It wasn't actually, they didn't really, it wasn't focusing on what the employee had done, but what they could do based on the fact that they were dissatisfied with the performance of the employee.
And this one's different because they did talk about what he had done, and they fired him for 7 or 8 causes listed. And there's no discernible tie to the discussing strategy with counsel. And then when Iowa Code says you list, it says things like only to the extent necessary. It seems like it just goes beyond that extent. And like I said, it may not. And one power you have is to listen to the minutes. And if the city's got nothing to hide, then this will all be over with and done with.
And I think that gets into, and we've had this discussion before, not with the new members, but with previous board members, and it might be better to have more of the board members present to have this discussion, because we've talked about how does attorney-client privilege intersect with our ability to subpoena confidential records that we then can't release what's in them. That's by code that we're then prohibited from releasing that. So basically all it would be doing would be listening and making a determination. But does attorney-client privilege prohibit us from being able to do that when the purpose of the closed session is under subsection C? That's one of the things that the Ombudsman's office said that we couldn't use subsection C, and our board at that point in time said yes we could, because we were talking about legal ramifications and legal options, and the board was talking with their attorney, and they maintained attorney-client privilege and would not release that closed session because it was attorney-client privileged. So we have not ever gotten to the point where we really looked at, sort of what comes out on top when you have conflicting protections. You have the protection of attorney-client privilege, and then you have the, protection of confidential records under 21 point, under the confidentiality of the closed session, which you could perhaps say, yes, you can listen to this, but can you, when you claim attorney-client privilege, does that then sort of overrule our ability to get direct access to those recordings without the benefit of having a court order? A subpoena is basically can be in a court order if it's then reviewable by a court. If somebody disputes the subpoena and then it's reviewed by a court, the court would make that final decision as to what prevails, attorney-client privilege or our ability to look at confidential materials.
In any case, I still ask, there's 2 board members here who haven't read my complaint. I ask that this be tabled until I can get a fair hearing after they've had an opportunity to read my complaint.
If I may, this isn't a hearing.
Sure.
For one.
Go ahead.
And for 2, I'm just asking that the board not put some sort of stricter restraint on employment litigation matters, which it never has, and there's no authority that I know of to do so than it does other litigation matters. I don't know why a government body could not go in under 21.5 1C, if I'm getting it right out of my head, to discuss imminent employment litigation or actual employment litigation when it can go in to discuss all other matters. And there's just no precedent for that. And I would, again, ask that this board dismiss the complaint outright, which I understand you might have to table then, but I would ask that the board make a motion to table this matter and for direction to dismiss the complaint.
I would say there's a victim here, which is a terminated police officer, who did not know his employment conditions were being considered because he thought the city council was discussing strategy with legal counsel. And I, as a member of the public, was completely flabbergasted as well. I read the Iowa law. I thought that you're only allowed to discuss what is necessary as what's listed for the reason going into closed session. And so I think there's good reason to think about it some more and table it. So I asked you to table it.
Seems to me that that's probably in order, but it's up to the board.
Well, I would like to know a little bit more about when you have a conflict between two provisions, how you resolve that conflict. I mean, they came out of this closed session and voted to remove an employee, so they must have been discussing his professional competency. So should they have also given notice under whatever section that is?
Aye, subsection I.
Yeah. Or both of them, and if they didn't, what's the remedy? So I'll move it to continue.
I think under the circumstances, that's probably the smartest thing for us to do, at least like that. Because I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not totally clear. I understand that issue, but it seems to me there's a lot of other stuff in here that I'm not quite ferreting through very well, to be honest with you. So I would entertain that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second to table. Any comment?
Now, and if there is some research that the board has that relates to that issue, I'd sure be happy to see it.
There really, outside of what T just mentioned, there really isn't
Okay.
anything more than that. But I can certainly pull that all together and make sure you all have copies of the ombudsman's statements. They're not legal because they aren't an attorney, or they weren't at the time that was done. And I'm not sure if there's any bar association discussions on it.
And I assume Mr. Swarm or counsel can provide any additional information they would like to provide us
Sure.
on the legal issue?
Yeah, if they have anything, I don't know.
So
I've researched it before, but I'm
I'm
not
not
aware.
clear with, so the legal issue is whether we were obligated to list every single potential reason for closed session.
Well, at least two. Yeah.
I'm not aware of any authority that requires us to do so.
Yeah, I'm
And
not
there's also
either.
that section that says closed session is limited to the basis for the motion that's made to go into the closed session, which, to me is significant.
Counselor, did you have an issue with the timing?
I'm sorry. what was
Did you have an issue with the time when the
She did.
complaint was filed?
No, she had an issue with the time that I raised the issue of the
The minutes.
the
I have an
minutes.
issue with the
Yeah.
minutes, with the actual founded item in the proposed order. I do have a jurisdictional timing issue.
I totally agree with her on that matter.
I don't think that's an issue anymore.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Council, thank you. Mrs. Swarm, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Yes, thank you very much for this consideration. I appreciate the work that you're doing here. Thank you.
I might just caution the chair, who will be here at the next meeting, is much more stringent about 5 minutes than I am.
I will. I
Just-
apologize. I had planned 5 minutes, and then I saw the previous matter going over, and I thought that was...
We start out with initial 5 minutes, and then it can expand if you're asked questions.
Okay, I do apologize for that, because otherwise I wouldn't have said everything at the beginning about agreeing with the city's council. I just would have gone right into what I was doing.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And then it's a copy of the complaint to the new people. I will. I'll do it all.
The next item is Dean Wolf from Pocahontas County Board of Health.
this is complaint, case number 22FC0029, Dean Wolf, the Pocahontas County Board of Health, has come before you as a dismissal order. It was filed on April 7th, alleging that the board violated Iowa Code Chapter 21. This Pocahontas County Board of Health is a governmental body in Pocahontas County. He alleged that the board director refused to place an item concerning the septic system on the agenda for its February 9th, 2022 meeting. Instead, he was advised that he could make comments during the public comments portion of the agenda. When he spoke during public comments, the board chair would not allow the board to deliberate or take action on the issue as it was not on the agenda. After he left the meeting, he was told that the board chair was asked if the issue he raised could be placed on a future agenda. He alleged that the board determined not to place his issue on a future agenda, and he cites that as a violation of Iowa Code Chapter 21. He asked that the board hold the board chair and the board director each liable for a violation of open meetings laws. I will note that the board chair would have been a member of the governmental body, but board director was not a member of that, considered a member of the governmental body, and the complaint is against the entire board and not just the two individuals he named. On April 22nd, Pocahontas County Attorney responded to the complaint on behalf of the board. He noted that both the board chair and the board director had resigned. He discussed the complaint with a board member who was present at the meeting. That board member stated that following public comments, a board member asked if the issue could be placed on a future agenda. The county attorney stated he was told that no discussion, deliberation, or action occurred. The board chair told the board that the matter would not be placed on the agenda, and the attorney stated he considered it a ministerial matter under the definition of a meeting. He also provided all the steps that board members could take to put something on an agenda if they disagreed with the board directors or the board chair's action in not putting something on an agenda. 21.7 allows the governmental board to make and enforce reasonable rules for the conduct of its meeting, and Iowa Code Section 21.2 sub 2 defines a meeting to include a gathering in person by electronic means, and it excludes gatherings of members of a governmental body for purely ministerial or social purposes when there is no discussion of policy or no intent to avoid the purposes of this chapter. I'm not quite certain whether discussion of that being ministerial is really appropriate, because the gathering was not ministerial. It was just a comment that was made there, was just as to the process for getting something on the agenda. The board, as a governmental body, has the statutory authority to set rules for the drafting of agenda and determining whether an issue will be set for deliberation and action at a meeting. Any discussion following the public comments was for the purpose of determining whether to place the issue on a future agenda. For the former board chair said it would not be on a future agenda, and if any member of the board wants to place the issue on an agenda, there is a mechanism for doing that. My determination it was not, the public comments conversation did not rise to the level of deliberating or taking action by the board, and it should be dismissed as legally insufficient. In providing this information to the parties, I was informed that Mr. Wolf was able to get his matter on a future agenda once the director and the board chair resigned, so they're all moving along, so I doubt if there's anybody here on this.
Anyone on the phone can speak to this? Susan, would you like to say something? Board have any comments?
No, but thank you very much.
Susan Stewart did send me a comment that she had on this. I'll let you know. She thinks that we don't even need to have a discussion on ministerial, because it's not an issue.
Board have any comments or questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to dismiss.
Move.
Second.
Second. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, that covers those matters. Margaret, you want to go briefly over what's left here, down to reports?
Sure, we can. Withdrawn, no action necessary on that. Pending complaints, we actually have gotten more since this was printed, so we'll have just as much to do next month.
Chair Margaret, would be the wish of the body to go back and email the original complaints of everything in pending to the new board members?
Probably be a good idea.
Okay.
I thought we,
I appreciate that.
I suggested to send it to everybody, just to make sure they all.
Well, he's doing all of them, every single one.
Yeah, I'll just make a zip file of those pending complaints that are in
Oh,
this
the pending,
list.
I thought you were talking about that, you're still hung up on that.
Yeah, no. These
Mount
12,
Pleasant.
these 12 listed under pending,
Oh,
put them in
I'm
one
sorry.
zip file, and because they've been sent out over the course of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
So that issue won't arise next month.
because
They're,
that's,
they're available, but you know,
and that's all the
nobody has
information that the board ever gets ahead of the orders. There's no other file information that you would ever see as a board member.
right, except for comments that were made, like the ones you got. Okay, so under committee reports, I don't think we have anything on communications. I do have, oops, that's a new one, so wait. Okay. You lost your quorum.
Yeah, I did.
But we don't, aren't voting on, we're not voting on anything, so. Do you want to hand that over to Joel? This I'm just going to pass around. Guess I don't need to send 15 copies over there. One for you, one for Brett, and one for Barry. And this is a copy of Senate File 2322, which is was approved and signed by the governor, and just this is just for your information. You might want to hold on to this and read this, because we will be talking about how this is going to be interpreted when we at our June meeting. So just to let you know that that's the purpose of that. And for those people who aren't physically here, we'll hand them out as well next month, or you can also just look at them online, or ask me if you want to look at it. But basically, it's just a copy of the Senate File 2322 that was just approved and signed by the governor. The other legislation that I've been following is Senate File 513. That is the Senate file that creates a new confidentiality provision, and it's 22.7 sub 5A, and that is basically would exclude body camera footage that occurs during a call for services for like a mental health issue or for a homeless issue. And that passed the Senate 48-0 on March 9th and passed the House 96-1 on April 5th, but it hasn't gone anywhere. Our budget passed the House on March 24th, 60-30, and it's still sitting in the Senate. They've done some work on budget bills this week, but not on ours. And it was added to based on what we had initially, not huge amount, I think it was $8,000, but we count pennies, so 8,000 is great. So that has been removed, but I'm following that. The other thing that was signed on May 2nd is House File 2154, and it makes certain retirement information for firefighters and EMTs and so forth, private information and police officers. It's has to do with, I would have thought it was things like, their social security number. And,
it reflects IPERS. It
Yeah.
reflects the code.
Yeah.
It's an IPERS, it's now in 411.
Yeah. So it's, that's the other thing that specifically is our kind of stuff. And then the only thing that we do have for you today deals with the rules. And you have that. as part of it before you, and this was a report out of the Rules Committee, and there are two proposed rules. The first one is a rule concerning preservation of records during the pendency of a complaint, and it would amend our rules that, and I see a typo already, it should be amend Rule 497 instead of 4497, but it would add, as I proposed it, staff shall notify the subject of the complaint that all records that may be relevant to the request shall be preserved until the complaint is fully adjudicated. I will note that Julie can't be here, of course, today, but she did contact me and said that she felt that that should read instead, all records that may be relevant to the complaint shall be preserved until the complaint is finally adjudicated, period. We talked about whether we would include staff will notify parties of this requirement. It was her suggested that we just say all records that may be relevant to the complaint shall be preserved until the complaint is finally adjudicated. And you would note that we're saying records that may be relevant to the complaint, so that would be records involving open meetings. It would be 21 and 22. It wouldn't be just restricted to, let's keep any of those records that are an issue. It would be any records that are relevant to the complaint shall be preserved until the complaint is finally adjudicated. So that's what is before you. If the board feels that would be appropriate and can support that, we can go forward and start the process for rules.
What's Julie's say again?
Hers was that, because right now it says staff shall notify the subject of the complaint that all records that may be relevant shall be preserved. And she said that she felt that does not direct the preservation of records, that just directs staff to tell them to preserve records.
No, I see.
And so if we just said all records that may be relevant to the complaint shall be preserved until the complaint is finally adjudicated.
What does adjudicated mean by all the way up the process?
No, I mean until resolved, I guess would be, maybe resolved's a better term.
By the board?
By the board,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's, adjudicated to me sounds like,
Judge and the
Yeah.
Supreme Court, yeah.
Although
But
the
it-
the records to be kept all the time.
Yeah.
But
Just
Barry,
FYI.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I agree with what you're saying, but essentially what you're saying is if it's a public record, don't destroy it, ever.
Right, or if there's a,
Even if the case is resolved, you shouldn't destroy a public record.
I don't think we can go so far as to tell them record retention, that's beyond our.
I understand, I was just clarifying
Yeah.
your point of view on
Yeah.
resolved versus
but
there
Barry,
may be land in the middle there.
back to your point, what if I guess my concern is if the matter goes beyond this board, then those records ought to be preserved. Maybe I missed your point.
well, I don't know whether we have the authority to do that, is my problem. There's, then you're sort of into the common law of preservation, spoliation of evidence.
Yeah. I just don't know if, maybe it's not necessary, I'm kind of reacting more than thinking through it, but it just, because I like the adjudicated, but I'm like you, I had made a different assumption about its meaning. I thought that meant if it does go to the district court or goes to,
Yeah, we don't dismiss the complaint though at that point, we still have that open, like we still have Kaufman and Klein open,
well,
so
that's right.
we haven't
Okay.
resolved
All
them
right.
yet.
Yeah, you're right, okay.
So-
All right, I'm okay with it, I'm fine.
With it being until the complaint is resolved, just that, instead of finally adjudicated or finally resolved, just resolved.
Finally resolved by the board. Yeah.
Okay, is
Well,
resolved?
But if it's an appeal, then it goes beyond the board, I guess, led to your point, as part of the record, it'd have to be preserved.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't know whether we have the legal authority to do that. Once we resolve the complaint, can we require them to continue to preserve records? Seems like that's out of our hands. It gets to that point.
I think then it goes to the rules of civil procedure.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, I don't think we
That's
have
probably,
the power.
that's correct, yeah.
And then that's really up to the attorneys to issue a demand that they preserve.
Right. Or make sure that it's part of the record, because when there's a contested case, there's a hearing record, and that's part of the appellate record then.
And that would be part of the record, okay.
Which I think that's what the Supreme Court actually did with their discussion of the Klein case, because they said, they're only going to deal with the records that were actually preserved as part of our order and as part of the challenge to the order. That they weren't going to go back and say, oh, and by the way, you have to go back and now dig out other records that weren't preserved and part of the issue. We're not going to require them to have kept those records. There's not going to be any challenge to the fact of whether they even have those records anymore. So, do you want it until the complaint is resolved? Is that what I'm getting? As
Yeah, I would support that.
Resolved or resolved by the board?
Yeah, by the board.
resolved by the board?
Resolved by the board.
Okay.
Go along with that.
Do y'all still have a quorum?
Yeah, we still have, do we still have people on the phone?
Yes, we do.
Hello?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yes, Joan's still here.
Okay. Right. At this point in time, just for citizen, this is all kind of,
I understand.
it's not really even a
Changing the
decision.
rules. I
Yeah.
understand. I understand.
It has to come back
Just
to
doing my
the,
job. Keep going. Don't let me slow you down.
okay. All right, so we can make that.
And then, just for people who don't know me, I came from legislative services where I was a bill drafter, and I think just from that experience, we should put in a subject, so maybe say all records that may be relevant to the complaint shall be preserved by the subject of the complaint or by both parties to the complaint.
Oh,
Who's
How about
doing
by
the
all parties?
preserving?
How about say by all parties?
It would be just,
Because there might be something that the
Yeah.
complainant has that would be relevant, and we want everything kept.
yeah, it would be by the parties.
Good call, man.
You want to say by everybody?
No, I said good call, Hannah. That's
By the world.
now, aren't you?
Did Hannah just
We're
show
gonna say
off?
by the
Pretty
world.
tough.
By the universe.
Show off?
I know.
Well,
There's no sides here.
we're going to get corrected.
By the universe, that's all we do. Okay, for the next one, we've had discussions back and forth about whether we want to have any kind of a rule about when a complainant can withdraw a complaint. There's been a concern that was raised that perhaps maybe a complainant gets pressured and feels like they have to withdraw their complaint, for whatever reason. And that, do we want to then take on that complaint and, give it separate life and just do it without having a complaining party? Or is that their complaint and they can withdraw it? And if they can withdraw it, at what point can they withdraw it? We've only had it come up once where we were at a probable cause point and we had a complainant who withdrew the complaint. It had to do with whether or not public records can be withheld based on copyright laws. So it was getting off tangent a little bit, but the complainant said that person told me that he was getting pressured to withdraw the complaint, so that because of the external and ongoing ramifications that us talking about copyright law could create, that it was sort of like people were telling him they really didn't want us to touch copyright issues. So that was at a probable cause. I was a little concerned. I was a little like, well, you could have told me before I did all that research. But anyway, that was the only time that I know that it's actually been an issue. And I know that, like EJ has said at times, well, maybe they want to go to district court and they want, or maybe they think that they can get better results from going to district court because it's only a small piece of the overall matter that they have at issue. And we don't want them going to district court saddled with a dismissal for any reason from the IPIB, whether that would create an issue preclusion issue or something. But anyway, so we were like pretty open and lenient if they wanted to withdraw a complaint. We didn't question whether we were going to allow them. So the Rules Committee came up with this as a section, which would read: a complainant may withdraw all or a portion of their complaint following the board issuing a written order finding probable cause only with the consent of the board. A complaint is considered withdrawn if the complainant elects to file an action with the court pursuant to Iowa Code section 23.5 something. Or do we even want to try to draft a rule to deal with withdrawals, or just leave that to the discretion of the board at all times?
I have mixed emotions about it. I can see why people would want to require board consent. On the other hand, you know, if the claim is, or a complaint is filed, it belongs to me. As far as I'm concerned, it belongs to the complainant. And if he or she wants to withdraw it, they ought to be free to do it. Because there may be reasons beyond what we were, within our jurisdiction, I guess. But I don't know. That's kind of my initial reaction to this concept, and I can't seem to get over it. But I'm certainly open.
What was the rationale behind not allowing it once there's a probable cause finding?
I think they just kind of picked it. That was sort of, it was like at that point in time, you wouldn't want to go forward with a contested case if you don't have a complaining witness. But you really wouldn't.
But our administrative rules say that you can, like 17A.12, if there's a contested case and the party declines to appear, declines to be involved in that case, there can still be a ruling without that party. So once there is a contested case, it's really...
Yeah, it has its own life at that point.
They can be out of it, and we can still find what we want to find.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of become a legal issue for the board?
Yeah, because then once there's a contested case, the parties are the board.
Right, and the respondent.
And the respondent.
And they become like a witness. And so sometimes you know, it's the only one that we've had, well, where we've called witnesses, was the very first one we did, and Keith called me as a witness because I'd done all the investigation. So there wasn't any, and there really wasn't any factual dispute over the facts of the case. It was real clear cut. There were emails and everything else that established the facts of the complaint. And so it did come down to a legal argument. You know, basically we almost had a stipulation to the facts kind of thing. There really wasn't anything disputed. So we didn't need the complaint at that point in time even to go forward. And we did. We go forward and we had a finding of a violation at the end of the contested case. And you know, the person, the witness in that case, was willing to do it, except he really didn't want to have to pick up work. And so we said, well, how about if we do telephone testimony if we absolutely need you? But then the judge said, no, we don't need to have him there.
So once there's a probable cause finding, if the complainant doesn't want to participate, then the board sort of steps in and takes over, or what?
Well, when we have a contested case, it's IPIB against respondent. It's almost like with a criminal case where you have a reporting, a complaint evidence, but the charges are filed by the state of Iowa against the defendant. So if there's contested case charges that are filed, it's filed, you know, the IPIB is the prosecutor and the plaintiff and the judge.
So we're the party.
Yeah, we're the party.
Okay.
Or if you think that maybe this is something we need to discuss when we have at least Julie here to talk about it, we can certainly postpone that rule or all the rules until the next meeting. Because she also wanted the IPIB, or the Rules Committee also wanted the IPIB to discuss in general whether anonymous complaints should be something that is, we couldn't come up with anything at the Rules Committee level, so we were going to see if what everybody else thought.
Or just to think if we need a rule for this.
Right.
Because
there's no point having a rule if we don't need one.
You know, we have a pending complaint that's by someone and we only have their email. And we can go so far on that, but if it becomes time to do like an informal resolution.
Well, we can still do it. Yeah.
We can still,
Yeah.
If it becomes time
just
for a
have to
contested case.
We can't, it's a
I don't
little
know
harder.
if we can still do it.
Why
but-
not?
So I think,
But they might decide at that
Yeah,
point, and
if
they
we-
want to be,
yeah,
want to
as
go have a name.
we've kind of discussed is that,
You know, as long as we have somebody to communicate with, we don't care what they call themselves.
yeah.
They could be purebred,
And that's,
good dog.
other agencies seem to do that too, that the ombudsman's office kind of does that. They kind of go, we can take this as far as we can, but at some point, if we need you to not be anonymous, then we might,
Yeah, or we
just
might
not
have
go
to-
forward with the complaint
Yeah.
because that's, we.
It would be
we need your
administrative
information.
discretion. You
Yes.
know, we would dismiss finding a probable cause that the the offense violation did occur, but because we don't have a witness to testify, we're going to have to dismiss it. It's an exercise of administrative discretion. So we have that ability to deal with those kind of situations. Because we don't ask for picture ID, so we don't have any idea that, even today, we don't know whether Jack Swarm's really Jack Swarm.
You sat there a long time, but you're not.
No, but I mean, you know, in terms of whether that's his real name, we've had complaints that we pretty well figured it wasn't their real name.
I don't know. And what did we think about the withdrawal issue?
Which one, the anonymous?
No, the withdrawal.
The one on,
Oh,
we're considering.
And as I say, the administrative rules committees strongly encourage you not to put rules up if you don't really need them.
Well, Hannah made an issue. Do we need one? I mean,
Yeah, well, and that's I think part of this
If
question.
we can move forward with a contesting case without them, do we really?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's an excellent point.
But do we also really need a rule stating that they can withdraw?
Right.
You know,
It's, you know, it's kind of like,
I
is
think-
it
I think
a
it's-
rule just to have a rule, or is it a rule
Yeah.
because it's needed?
I like that, but I guess I don't think you need it, but you all are more familiar with what goes on.
Oh, I tend to agree, so.
I'm not sure you
I
need it.
don't think one- I don't know if we need it or not.
Yeah,
Right. That's why it's before you guys,
yeah.
Yeah.
we couldn't get a consensus out of it.
Well, we could, well, let's do this. Again, there's only 3 of us, or I know there's 5 of us, but it's difficult for the people there to participate. So why don't we just wait and take that up at the next meeting?
We certainly can.
That's probably, but it's nice.
We will make note, though, of the changes. Did you want to go ahead with the first one, or just put them all to the next meeting?
I don't know.
I would prefer that we do it in bulky groups, because the process
Well,
is
then wait.
a headache.
Then we'll just wait.
that's fine.
So you want to not do, because we have a
We'll do the other one.
timeliness rule.
That one can be
Yeah, we
going
have
through.
2 rules that are in the process.
Right. So
Okay.
we'll save these, so we won't have 3
So
submissions.
we
We'll
don't
have-
want to do the preservation of records rule? Is that what I'm hearing?
Or do you want to? We don't care.
Say that again?
Do we want to do the preservation of records rule this meeting?
The next meeting?
or next
one.
meeting.
This
Oh, next meeting.
Yeah, we
Because
just
it
do
doesn't matter
we
to
do it
me,
all
because I
together.
have to
Yeah.
do some
What-
refiling anyways.
Yeah.
There's two
So,
advantages.
I
First of
can-
all, you got them all together, and secondly, you'll have, hopefully, you have, full board, so
Right.
Okay.
it makes sense to
Yeah.
work.
Okay.
One thing I want to mention, and I just put it on the table, talking about preservation of records, I think, given it a lot of thought, because we had that case not too long ago, I think there ought to be, and maybe it's statutory and not a rule, but I'd like to see preservation of records for a period certain after their creation. And I'm
Record retention, yeah.
record retention, and
That should be chapter 22A.
There are some general record retention rules.
But they're not consolidated.
But not not in 21 or 22.
Yeah.
because I think, I like this, I like the rule, but I also think we ought to go further than this. I think there ought to be, and if there is, then tell me. I'm not.
Well, but it's spotty, it's real spotty.
There's different rules for different
Okay.
agencies.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, what
you
I'm
could
saying-
find those rules all over.
But he's talking about having a statute. that
Yeah,
actually
we could
goes
also
there.
adopt legislation.
Yeah, I'm thinking it
That
ought to
would
be
combine
legislation, it
those.
ought to apply to governments. And it, but I can't articulate, what it specifically ought to be, but it ought to, I think one of the problems we're dealing with is, I just wonder, it's a question, whether or not the retention statutes that are in place, wherever they apply, whether they cover, emails and phone notes and, all these other
No,
things.
yeah, I think for the most part it's like, how long do you keep a birth certificate?
Yeah, I think.
Certificate of death, I mean, it's not,
I think we need, anyway, I think we need to have that discussion, I guess is what I'm saying. Because it's based on that one case that we had, I can't remember, it was the Department of Health, was it, I think? But anyway, those emails that got deleted.
workforce development.
Workforce development, anyway. So I just think we ought to talk about it, I'm not saying it,
We'll refer that to the legislature.
I was just, so that feels like a point, like, moving forward, who will be on the legislative committee?
I don't think they'll make that decision until July.
whether it's, I agree, it ought to be a statute, so whoever, but I think this board needs to chew on that.
And that's something for the new members. The first meeting in July is the meeting when the board chooses the chair and the vice chair. And it's usually the chair then that does the committee assignments, so it's usually based on a volunteer basis. I volunteer kind of thing. But, so you have until then to kind of think about what committee you want to be on. And so some people who wanted to be on a committee, but it's been too full, this is your opportunity to say, my turn to get on that. The legislative committee is always really, really popular. The communications committee is not.
Yeah.
And sometimes the rules isn't terribly popular either, because that's.
EJ, can I just clarify what you're kind of thinking? So are you thinking of kind of a compilation of all these different rules for different
Well, I don't know what.
records retentions that are, sprinkled throughout the code? Or are you thinking more of a best practices if there's no other specific rules that apply to these records?
And
Here's what we should
my
do.
concern is that we only have chapters 21 and 22, and if it's not already in chapter 22, I'm not sure that it's going to be looked upon nicely if we start wandering around and entering into rules or proposing legislation that's beyond the scope of our limited statutory involvement.
The legislative committee can talk about it, and they can talk about whether they think there's something that can go to 22. I mean, it could be a new definition, it could be, there could be something slim
Right.
to 22 if you wanted to.
Yeah.
It's hard to answer
Yeah,
the
what
question
is-
because
yeah.
I don't know all the retention rules that are out there, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying that it just seems to me to be consistent with who we are. There ought to be something, and I think it ought to be an art that documents, and I would define documents to include emails and memos and everything else, ought to be kept for a certain period of time after their creation. Now,
There could be an intent in 22.
so I would guess it would be in 22. If it conflicts with other sections, then we have to decide
Right.
how to go about it.
Yeah.
Just
Well, we've struggled with document preservation in Dubuque for years. It's such an enormous task. What do you preserve? How long do you preserve it? I mean, we've never come to any agreement on.
And,
It's very limited in terms of what cities have to preserve. Bonds. I don't know, some very limited kinds of instruments that the city has to preserve. So.
yeah. And I remember starting out as a county attorney in 2007, there was a draft policy on record retention that ISAC was doing, and it's still just a draft policy on record retention. I mean, it's never been able to get to the point where it's even distributed among the counties.
That's where we left it.
Yeah.
see, and I'm not thinking, Barry, about something 10 years or 20 years or whatever. I'm thinking 90 days or something, and I more have in mind the internal administrative communiques that go on. That I'm not talking about much beyond that. And that's what I have in mind. So I'm.
So maybe directed at like documents of government bodies.
Yeah.
Not documents created by a government body like a birth certificate, but internal documents of a government body.
It's administrative stuff. I mean, like emails, memos, notes of phone call conferences, that kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of which is not kept at all anymore.
Yeah, and
Some people delete it immediately, and other people, like me,
And that's my
forever.
point.
Yeah.
I don't think if it's government business, it ought to be preserved for at least for the period of time that it would take to file a complaint with the board. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. And then, there's the whole, section 12 of our rules or whatever, the whole thing that state governments have to do because we're all within, and so we have record retention requirements, all state agencies do.
But do they cover these kinds of things?
They should. It's each agency has to have its own record retention policy, and it has to be approved by the state records archivist. Like ours is 10 years.
Well,
In our office.
Better look at it.
Yeah, and that's based on the fact we figure we're going to run out of space in our file cabinets in 10 years. But I'm not sure if OCIO does that, because our emails are all retained by them.
Okay, what else are we doing?
Oh, you have
Anything
all
else?
the status reports. No. Oh, just to let you know, and it's not June 21st, it's now July 12th. July 11th, right?
Yep.
For the timeliness rule, so we need to make sure that that's in the minutes. It's now July 11th at 3 p.m.
And the rule should be published
The timeliness rule.
on June 16th.
Yeah.
Come on, let's get it.
They have all these different, like, if it rains on Monday, then you have to have a hearing at 3 o'clock on Saturday. I mean, we have to meet all of these timeliness rules in order to set a hearing on our timeliness rule. So, yeah, that's
pretty.
July 11th is the date. We wanted to do it June 21st, but we're now being allowed to do it on July 11th.
But that will just be.
Right, yeah, the board doesn't have to appear to that, although if you want to, you can, except if we have a quorum, then I have to do notice of it, separate notice.
But it's just for public comments.
Yeah, it's for people who want to show up and complain about our timeliness.
This is 69.
Excuse me?
69.
No, this is the timeliness rule that was approved last meeting that talks about how long you have to respond to records requests and so forth.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of pushback on it. People think 2 days is too fast to have to respond. They respond to the status stuff.
Yep. You.
Yeah. Margaret, you want me to do it?
Okay, contacts and activities, you can see where we are on all of the reports that are being, that have been provided for you. Our April, this year was kind of quiet compared to previous Aprils, but our May is on track to be not so quiet. And this is just for board members, what this shows is our activity on our website. And because it's not in color, it's kind of hard to read, but basically we have 13% of that's on our website are returning visitors, and this is based on URLs. And the others, so in this case 73%, 77% is new visitors. And then I get a Google analysis that's sent to me every month, and we've had 1,700 clicks on our website, 35,000 plus impressions, and one page with first impression. But the big thing is we got 26 clicks on open meetings, 10 clicks on filing a complaint, and another part of open meetings. So open or not, and then public records. So we had kind of those are top performing. And so I have like our top performing pages. How do people find us? And Iowa Freedom of Information Board, or they Google Iowa Freedom of Information Board and get us. They Google our police reports, public records in Iowa, and they get us, or Iowa Code Chapter 21, and they get us. And they even give you more details, but that's more than I need to know. Because Brett's going to report on that.
And so for the new members, we put out these little reports each month, just so you can track where we are month over month, year over year, and you can compare how we're doing with stats. And so the financial report that you get, this is just what I pull off our State of Iowa account. I typically show you 3 categories. One's year to date, one's the current year budget, and then the last category is actuals from last year. This way you can see if we're within budget, if we're ahead of last year, and so on. And right now we're going to have some reserves after this year's over. We're not going to spend it all. We had a vacancy in staff position, which is going to account for some of the unspent money, but we'll do our best to spend it before the end of the year.
Good.
Get some more microphones.
Get some more microphones.
Better system.
I wish, but
What it'll do, we'll start saving our money for our own conference room,
right,
and then
our
we'll make
own
it
building.
state of the art.
Well, that'd be nice.
So whoever wants to lead that
Maybe we can get
capital campaign appropriation
I wonder if we could
legislation.
get lapel
So
mics, you know? We get little lapel mics, and then we could all just be mic'd. Okay.
So health of the agency is good.
Presentations and trainings. This month, I've been doing this Iowa Iowa State Sheriff's Association regional training on records retention and redaction. But I do part of the morning stuff, and we were in Webster City on May 4th, Denison on the 11th, yesterday in Iowa City, and next week in Osceola. And they also have Zoom access to it. So we've had, like yesterday, I think we had 100 people, like maybe 35, 40 in person, and the rest are on Zoom. I've got the entire police department from the University of Iowa attending by Zoom next week, along with their legal counsel. We've gotten some really, really, really good feedback on it in terms of the information. It's kind of surprising how little training some of the people that are attending this have, because they come up and ask us questions, and I'm like, okay. But in particular, the jail staff, they've had some, I don't know whether they're really trained all that well. It's sort of like, oh, you're new, you got to do this, kind of thing until you've been here for a while. So I think it's just been really beneficial. Yeah, they got it taped, and we put the PowerPoint on our website. So it's on our website too, so people can look up our morning PowerPoint. The afternoon's more on the nitty-gritty of filling out reports and stuff like that, and how long they have to keep them and everything. So it's more, I don't stay for the afternoons usually. And then doing a training for the Iowa State Association of County Auditors in Dubuque on the 24th of June. So all morning kind of thing. If you know people that want us to participate in trainings and so forth, we're here and we're available.
Okay. Next meeting is June 16. Any other business to come? Anybody on the phone? Hello?
Uh-oh.
I'm good.
Okay.
Good. All right. Well, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Good, moved and seconded. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And I hope there's nobody opposed. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody drive safely.
Thank you.
And hit the road.
I have 4:14.
That's all right.
Corporate.